Chapter 61. To survive, they'd sell even their own mothers and fathers. In the face of blood and violence, it was easy to get carried away with the idea of being a hero. But staying a hero was not so easy. This guy who had started by cursing at Wu Mindan's entire ancestral line could no longer curse after having his third finger chopped off. Instead, he started begging for mercy. But no matter how much he struggled or pleaded, Wu Mindan, that scumbag, showed no mercy whatsoever. In front of everyone, using the most brutal methods, he tormented and chopped off all 10 fingers of his hands. The brutality and perversion Wu Mindan displayed today terrified all of us, especially those who had not completed their sales targets. Several of them actually wet themselves right there on the spot. 2 women even fainted from the shock. I used to think I knew Wu Mindan quite well, but now I realized that I had never truly understood him. At the same time, this showed just how much this scumbag valued the position of the soon-to-be established team leader of the 10th fraud group. In order to force his underlings to achieve sales, and in order to become a team leader, he showed a level of madness and cruelty that chilled me to the bone. If Wu Mindan, that scumbag, is like this, then how much more monstrous must those other Myanmar scumbags who also want to be team leaders be? Thinking of this, a feeling of bleakness rose in my heart. Perhaps the next week would be the darkest week for all the pigs in the compound. After this week, I didn't know how many people would be crippled. I didn't know how many people would be driven insane or tortured to death. Throw this piece of trash into the water prison to feed the flies and maggots. I don't keep useless people under my command. After personally sawing off the 10 fingers of that impulsive young man, Wu Mindan wiped the blood off his hands on him. Then, with a disgusted look, he had the man dragged out. After that impulsive youth was dragged away, this scumbag showed off his white teeth, staring at the crowd that was on the verge of collapsing from fear. Next, who wants to go first? Wu Mindan's words caused everyone to shudder, and everyone instinctively backed away. You? Or you? How about you go first? Anyone Wu Mindan pointed at had their expression change drastically, their bodies shaking like sieves, desperately shaking their heads. The woman who was the last to be randomly pointed at by that scumbag was so frightened that she lost control of her bladder and bowels, and the entire office was filled with a disgusting smell. Heh. If you're so timid, how dare you not complete your sales? Then let's start with you. Wu Mindan frowned, pinched his nose in disgust, and was about to order someone to drag the woman out of the crowd. Seeing 2 menacing Myanmar scumbags walking toward her, the woman who had lost control of her bladder and bowels collapsed to her knees with a thud. Team leader, please give me another chance. I swear, I'll complete my sales tomorrow no matter what. Really, please trust me. I can really complete my sales tomorrow? The woman knelt on the ground, sobbing and begging while kowtowing. Yes, team leader, please give us another chance. Team leader, I also promise to complete my sales tomorrow. If I don't, I will ask my family to wire money and make up the difference. Yes, I can also have my daughter wire money for my sales. The woman's begging after losing control of her bladder and bowels immediately triggered a chain reaction. The rest of them all knelt on the ground and begged for mercy, as if they had seen a glimmer of hope. Perhaps the miserable end of that impulsive young man, having his 10 fingers chopped off in public, had completely terrified these people. In order not to repeat his fate, some of them were already planning how to swindle money from their families to boost their sales. Even more chilling was that some people were making vows to trick their wives, daughters, parents, or siblings into coming over to offset their sales deficits. This is humanity for you. To save their own lives, they're really willing to sell even their own mothers and fathers. Listening to these people's vows, I was filled with both hatred and anger. But all the anger and contempt ultimately turned into a silent sigh. If I were the one facing the blade, how much better would I be? It seems like you all know you were wrong. Since that's the case, I will spare your fingers for now. Remember what you just said? If anyone fails to complete their sales tomorrow, you'll have to figure out how to make up for it yourself. If you fail to complete your sales and can't make up for the deficit, then I won't be as easy to talk to as I was today. Wu Mindan's sinister gaze swept across everyone's faces, as if he was going to remember them all. Anyone his gaze landed on kowtowed like they were pounding garlic, making vows again and again. Okay, go eat. Have a good rest after your meal. Smiling with satisfaction, Wu Mindan waved his hand at us, then put his hands behind his back and walked out of the office as if nothing had happened. After Wu Mindan's figure had completely disappeared, the office was immediately filled with the sound of people gasping for breath. In those short 10 minutes, Not only were those who had failed to complete their sales scared half to death, but we who had completed our sales were also too afraid to breathe. Let's go. Let's hurry to the cafeteria. If we're late, there might not be any food left. Hee hee. I finally became a C-level salesman last week. This week, I don't have to eat those plain steamed buns and watery porridge anymore. A C-level salesman is nothing. I can finally eat meat. It wasn't easy. None of those who had completed their sales targets today bothered to check on the colleagues kneeling on the ground. Many of them walked quickly towards the cafeteria as if they had been starved to death. Some people even pointed at the ones who had wet themselves with disgust, blaming them for wasting their mealtime. I, too, only glanced at the ones who had been frightened into paralysis in the crowd. I walked to the cafeteria without saying a word. In this hellhole, I couldn't even guarantee my own safety. How could I still have any compassion for others? Don't think I'm lucky to not be among those who had their fingers chopped off today. If I failed to achieve 3 million in sales this week, my fate would be 10 times more tragic than theirs. Not spitting at them, and not mocking, blaming, or cursing them, was already the highest moral standard I could maintain in this hellhole. This is only the beginning. I wonder how many of us in this group of 50 or so will still be alive and in one piece by the end of the week. The moment I walked out of the office, when I unintentionally saw the resentment and malice in the eyes of a few of those struggling to get up from the ground, a bad premonition immediately arose in my heart. When people are desperate, their thoughts cannot be judged by common sense, and they are capable of anything. I even suspected that someone might take a risk and try to escape. Chapter 62. Perverted Punishments for Failing to Meet Sales Targets, Electric Shock, and Milk Tea. I was so exhausted both mentally and physically that day. I overlooked something important. When I saw the miserable state He Hui was in at the cafeteria that night, I was immediately shaken. Zhao Paozi's luck wasn't so great either. Even with my help and guidance, he hadn't been able to complete the 30,000 in sales. But he was lucky enough to get a deal of over 10,000, and even though he was hauled away by Myanmar scumbags with guns, he was eventually safe and sound. He Hui, who had been assigned to the second group, was not so lucky. When I saw him in the cafeteria, his head was wrapped in a bandage and the blood had already seeped through. Brother Chong, you have to find a way to help me. If this goes on, I will be killed in a couple of days. After getting their food and sitting together at a table, He Hui immediately asked for help with a face of utter despair. That scumbag Atai also increased your sales targets? I gritted my teeth as I looked at the bandage on his head. I had a rough idea of how He Hui had gotten injured. That scumbag demands that each of us complete at least 20,000 in sales every day. If anyone fails on the first day, he cuts off one ear, then another on the second day. On the third day, he chops off a foot. On the fourth, a hand. On the fifth, he cuts off the nose. On the sixth day, he gouges out an eye. And on the seventh day, he pulls out the tongue. That scumbag Atai isn't human at all. He's just an animal. Today, our entire second group, including myself, had a total of 13 people have one of their ears cut off. His grandpa. Speaking of that scumbag Atai, He Hui's eyes instantly turned red, and his suppressed voice could not stop trembling. Holy crap. Your group is way too perverted. I originally thought that Wu Minden in our group was already brutal and bloody. Compared to your group, is that scumbag actually considered merciful? Even Zhao Paozi, who had a fearless nature, was scared pale after hearing about the punishments for failing to meet sales targets in He Hui's group. Actually, Wang Lingling and I were in no better condition. Our expressions were just as grim. If someone were to fail to meet the minimum sales target for a week straight, they would be utterly useless even if they did survive. It would be better for them to just die outright. Eyes, ears, nose, and tongue, as well as both hands and feet all gone. That would be a so-called human stick. What was the point of living? Ahua in our group is not as bloody as He Hui's group, but he also requires everyone to double their sales target every day. Those who don't complete their targets will have women drink milk tea in public, while men get electrified. If anyone fails to meet their sales targets for 3 consecutive days, the men will have their birds cut off, while the women's punishments haven't been mentioned yet. As she spoke, Wang Lingling seemed to have recalled something, and her face was filled with lingering fear. I can guess what electrified means, but what's drinking milk tea? The depravity of these Myanmar scumbags was truly beyond my imagination. After being in the compound for so long, this was the first time I'd heard of a punishment like drinking milk tea. Sigh. For women, This drinking milk tea punishment is worse than killing them. I don't know which scumbag came up with this evil trick. It's just too despicable. Do you know what it feels like to be shocked by electricity? Ahwa, that scumbag, makes the women take off their clothes and places 2 electrified clamps on their nipples. The more Wang Lingling spoke, the paler her face became. I could even feel her body trembling uncontrollably. Today, 6 women in our group drank milk tea. Without exception, all of them lost control of their bladder and bowels on the spot. There were also some women who had completed their sales targets who wet themselves from the shock. By the end, Wang Lingling's teeth were chattering. You had to know that Wang Lingling's psychological endurance was very strong now. For her to be so scared showed how terrifying the milk tea punishment was. Although I hadn't personally seen the Myanmar scumbags make the women drink milk tea, I had a pretty good idea of what it looked like in my head, based on Wang Lingling's descriptions, and I couldn't help but shiver. Damn, these Myanmar scumbags are all beasts. They've even come up with such cruel ways of punishment. I couldn't help but feel a little fortunate and a bit afraid. Luckily, I had a certain talent for telecom fraud, and luckily, I hadn't been assigned to the 3rd group. Thinking of the electrified punishment that Wang Lingling mentioned, I felt an intense urge to pee. I could even imagine that those who had suffered this kind of punishment would never be able to function again, even if they were lucky enough to escape this hellhole alive in the future. Brother Chong, you have to come up with a solution. It's not easy for me to achieve 50,000 in sales a week, let alone 20,000 in sales every day. Today, I've already had 1 ear cut off. If I fail to complete my sales tomorrow, I definitely won't be able to keep the other one. If this goes on, I won't be able to hold out for more than a few days. He Hui looked at me with a thick, crying tone, his eyes full of pleading and terror. Brother Chong, I can't even complete 30,000 in sales a day. Just as He Hui finished speaking, Zhao Paozi took a big bite of his steamed bun, agreeing. Just as He Hui said, it was already very difficult for them to complete 50,000 in sales a week. What's more, the tasks imposed by those Myanmar scumbags had now at least doubled. The worst thing was that the assessment method had also changed from weekly to daily. This kind of assessment method put pressure even on me, let alone them. But what could I do about it? I had already told them the skills and methods they needed to know. I couldn't possibly take on all their sales tasks myself, complete sales for them, or be punished in their place. Not to mention whether I was willing, that scumbag Wu Minden would definitely not agree. Don't worry, eat first. Let's discuss while we eat. We can definitely think of something. I put a piece of braised pork in each of their bowls, and I could only temporarily reassure them. When I was putting food in Zhao Paozi's and He Hui's bowls, Wang Lingling lightly kicked me under the table without being noticed. I knew what she wanted to remind me of, but I still wanted to try my best and see if there was a way to help He Hui and Zhao Paozi get through this hurdle. After all, apart from Yu Xiao, who I had only met once, and Wang Lingling, who had gradually won my trust with her life and actions, the only people I could barely trust in the entire telecom fraud compound were those 2. I felt a bit reluctant and heartbroken to give up on them just like this. If I were to give up on He Hui and Zhao Paozi at this crucial point without saying a word, they would inevitably resent me, and they might even retaliate because of it. Even if I were to give up on them, it definitely wouldn't be today. Because with my current understanding of human nature, once I decided to give up on He Hui and Zhao Paozi, I would subconsciously think of taking steps to eliminate any potential danger. Chapter 63, Terrified, an Escape Plan. Brother Chong, how about we look for an opportunity to escape? If I remember correctly, it will be the weekly supply delivery again tomorrow. Then, we can find a way to hide under the supply truck. With a bit of luck, we might actually be able to get out. After silently eating the large piece of braised pork I had placed in his bowl, He Hui suddenly carefully observed his surroundings. He moved his head closer and lowered his voice so that only the 4 of us could hear. Escape? I paused while eating and looked at him in surprise. I didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to hold on, not even for a day, and the thought of running away already crossed his mind. It seemed that Ahua, that scumbag in charge of their group, had completely shattered He Hui's courage with his cruel and bloody tactics today. What if we get caught? Before I could even speak, Wang Lingling was the first to ask in a low voice. I've already thought about it. When we're done with lunch tomorrow, we can find an opportunity to sneak under the truck. Before that, we can try to kill 1 or 2 lone Myanmar scumbag guards and steal their guns, just in case. Then, even if we get caught, so be it. The more He Hui spoke, the more agitated he became, and the madness in his eyes grew more intense. I frowned slightly. I had thought about this method a long time ago, and the success rate was definitely no more than 50%. Actually, hiding in the weekly supply truck was indeed a decent method with a relatively high feasibility. But there were a few difficulties that needed to be overcome. First of all, was how to sneak onto the truck. Just solving this problem would definitely not be as simple as Hui said. There were not so many opportunities to sneak onto the trucks unnoticed. Also, hiding under the truck was extremely unadvisable, because from the information I had pieced together by asking around, the guards at the checkpoints entering and exiting the compound would always check the undercarriages of the vehicles. If we really hid under the truck, the probability of being discovered would be almost 100%, unless we bribed the Myanmar scumbag guards at the checkpoints in advance. The method I had previously considered to escape was to become very familiar with the Myanmar scumbags who transported the supplies and find a chance to blend into the supply truck. As for what Hui had said about trying to kill one or two Myanmar scumbags and stealing their guns, it was no different than courting death. If it were that easy, someone would have already stolen a gun and escaped. Would they still be waiting till now? Although I disagreed with Hui's spur-of-the-moment escape plan, I didn't show it on the surface. From the madness in his eyes, I could tell that no matter what I said, he probably wouldn't listen. Do you have a more detailed plan? After subtly exchanging a glance with Wang Lingling, I took a bite of my food and asked in a low voice as if I were serious. Tomorrow, after lunch, Paozi and I will pretend to have stomachaches and find an opportunity to kill a Myanmar scumbag while going to the bathroom and steal their gun, and then… Wait a minute. I interrupted Hui before he could finish. You just said you were going to kill a Myanmar scumbag while going to the bathroom. How exactly are you going to do it? They have guns. After thinking for a moment, Hui glanced at Zhao Paozi and continued. I can make some noise in the bathroom to attract the Myanmar scumbag outside to come in. Then, Paozi will take the opportunity to put a chokehold on the guy from behind. Then, I'll steal the gun and hold his arms and legs down and choke him to death. As he spoke, Hui picked up his porridge and took a sip, and then glanced at the armed guards in the cafeteria out of the corner of his eye. Paozi, can you handle it when the time comes? I put another piece of braised pork in Zhao Paozi's bowl and asked quietly. Aye. Zhao Paozi opened his mouth and hesitated, obviously not so confident in his heart. It wasn't easy for ordinary people to subdue an armed Myanmar scumbag with their bare hands while keeping it quiet. Just as I was looking for an excuse to refuse Hui, Wang Lingling spoke first. I don't think anyone wants to escape this hellhole more than I do. I'd be the first to agree with both hands to escape the compound. But we only have one chance, so we must consider it as thoroughly as possible. How about this? Tonight we'll all go back and think carefully and try to come up with a foolproof plan. Then, we can meet again at breakfast tomorrow to discuss it. What do you think? I understood what Wang Lingling meant. What she said was just a pretext. The reason she said it was to reassure Hui and Zhao Paozi and not make things difficult for me. I naturally wouldn't fail Wang Lingling's kindness and immediately agreed. She's right. If there's the slightest mistake in this kind of thing, it will be catastrophic. We definitely need a more detailed and specific plan. Hui's expression changed uncertainly for a moment, and he finally could only nod, indicating that he would think about it again that night. The four of us ate this meal like it was wax. After finishing it hastily with our minds elsewhere, we returned to our rooms. As soon as we entered our room, Wang Lingling lowered her voice in worry. Brother Chong, if Hui and Zhao Paozi are determined to escape, we absolutely can't have any connection with them. At this point, the security guards in the compound must be more strict than ever. It's practically impossible to escape. At my repeated requests, Wang Lingling finally changed her way of addressing me. She no longer called me master, but instead, like Hui and the others, she called me Brother Chong. The address master had too strong a class connotation. It was too easy to become accustomed to it and gradually fall into depravity. Don't worry, I'm not stupid. I understood Wang Lingling's reminder, of course. Although I dreamed of escaping this hellhole alive, I certainly wouldn't do it in this way. Unless it was absolutely necessary, I wouldn't be stupid enough to risk my life. There was no point in leaving the compound as a corpse. Today, Hui had one ear cut off. He's obviously been terrified. I guess he'll make a move before work ends tomorrow. And with his intelligence, he'll definitely try to pull us in. Brother Chong, why don't we just go all in? Wang Lingling's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness, and she made a gesture of slitting her throat. Although I didn't want to admit it, Hui, in his current state, was indeed a ticking time bomb. If I were to continue to keep him around, it was highly likely that he would blow us all up with him. But if I were to turn him over to the Myanmar scumbags, Or if I were to try to get rid of him as Wang Lingling suggested, I wouldn't be able to get past my own conscience. After all, everything was just our speculation and worry. Up until this point, He Hui had not done anything that could potentially harm us. Chapter 64. The Escape Attempt, Abu's Mask Slips. Forget it. Although I'm not a soft-hearted person, the best way to handle this is just to let things play out naturally. If He Hui manages to escape alive, that's his own destiny. If he fails to escape, is killed or caught, then that's his fate. Whether he succeeds or fails, we just won't get involved. Although I knew that Wang Lingling's suggestion was the most beneficial for us, in the end, I decided not to help, not to harm, and stay out of it. There was indeed some risk in doing this. For example, if He Hui was caught later, he might hold a grudge and implicate Wang Lingling and me. But I believe that at this most critical juncture, as long as my sales performance was good enough, Wu Mindin would not let anything happen to me. Besides, it's not like I couldn't speak for myself. When the time came, there was no way I would let He Hui say whatever he wanted. However, what I did not expect was that Wang Lingling's actions would still exceed my expectations. The next morning, Wang Lingling and I went to the cafeteria for breakfast as usual. Just as I was holding my plate of shredded pork noodles and an egg, preparing to find a corner spot to wait for He Hui and Zhao Paozi, Abu, that scumbag, walked in with a dark face, leading several Myanmar scumbags with guns. As soon as he entered, Abu announced in a cold voice, "Everyone, immediately put down what you're holding and gather in the yard." Gather in the yard right now? I just got my porridge. What if someone steals my steamed buns if I leave them here? Your two lousy steamed buns are nothing. This is clear soup noodles. Can't you let me finish before I go out? Some people who had just received their breakfast and hadn't started eating started complaining in low voices. Especially those guys who had just been promoted from D-level salesman to C and B levels yesterday, were obviously very worried about leaving their breakfasts in the cafeteria like that. I looked down at the plate of shredded pork noodles and an egg I was holding and frowned. If I really left breakfast here, there probably wouldn't be 2 mouthfuls left when I came back. Abu, that scumbag, rarely comes to the main cafeteria. What's with this sudden outburst today? Something must be wrong. For Abu, that scumbag, to personally come to the cafeteria and demand an emergency gathering this early in the morning, something big must have happened. Abu, who was usually in the habit of having a slight smile like a boy next door, pulled out the retractable baton he was carrying and hit the face of the unlucky guy nearest to him. The blow was extremely heavy, and the guy immediately fell face first on the ground, his nose collapsing. After casually knocking someone over, Abu, that scumbag, with a cold face, used the baton to forcefully attack several pigs nearby. After beating 7 or 8 people so badly that they were bruised and screaming as they scrambled away holding their heads, this scumbag panted heavily, holding his baton, and said coldly, "If anyone hasn't left the cafeteria within 1 minute, then they won't be eating for the next 3 days." After Abu finished speaking, he turned around and left, not even bothering to look at us pigs again. Damn, what's with that bastard this early in the morning? I cursed silently in my heart, no longer caring about the shredded pork noodles in my hand. I threw them on the table and pulled Wang Lingling as we ran outside. From what I knew about Abu, that scumbag, for him to be so angry this early in the morning, something big that I didn't know about must have happened. Because I had always been in the habit of sitting in the corner. Luckily Wang Lingling and I were quick, or else we would not have been able to squeeze out of the cafeteria within the time Abu, that scumbag, had specified. It wasn't that this simple cafeteria was big, it was just too chaotic with all the pushing and shoving. Moreover, there were those unfortunate guys who had just been beaten up, lying on the ground like dogs, blocking the way. So that, in the end, there were still 6 unlucky guys who either were pushed over or twisted their ankles in the pushing and shoving and failed to squeeze out of the cafeteria within 1 minute. Abu, that scumbag, had always meant what he said. What he said was 1 minute was 1 minute. Those 6 unlucky people who were late not only would not have food for the next 3 days, but they each got a hit on their mouths as well. The Myanmar scumbags who were hitting them were not holding back. I personally saw someone scream in pain after being hit, and when he opened his mouth, several teeth fell out. There was also someone whose mouth was beaten so badly that his teeth were sticking out from his lips. The most unlucky woman had her mouth and nose explode from a hit and fell backwards on the ground and never got up again. Not only would those 6 unlucky people who were beaten be unable to eat for 3 days, but they would probably have trouble speaking for the next week. What exactly happened? Abu, that scumbag, wouldn't get so angry for no reason. I was in the crowd, My eyebrows furrowed into a knot. I was becoming more and more uneasy. This week was the critical moment for the selection of the team leader of the 10th fraud group. All the groups in the 9 fraud groups were going all out to boost their sales. It was hard to say what happened to those who had been randomly beaten by Abu in the cafeteria, but the 6 unfortunate people whose mouths were hit were definitely not going to be able to make phone calls for telecom fraud. This kind of punishment clearly didn't make sense. Moreover, I also noticed that not only did Abu, that scumbag, come personally, but Wu Minden and the other 4 deputy team leaders also came. Everyone's expression was very ugly, as if someone had dug up their ancestral graves. When I saw Wu Minden in the crowd, that scumbag obviously saw me too, and subtly winked at me. I understood the warning in that scumbag's eyes. What is that scumbag trying to warn me about? Is he warning me not to make any rash moves, or not to be a troublemaker? Just as I was lost in thought, Wang Lingling behind me suddenly tugged on my sleeve and pursed her lips. I looked up in the direction she indicated and saw 2 familiar figures being dragged out from behind like dead dogs by the Myanmar scumbags. How could it be them? My eyes twitched uncontrollably, and my heart leaped into my throat. The 2 men being dragged out by the Myanmar scumbags like dead dogs were He Hui and Zhao Paozi. He Hui's head was drooping powerlessly, and his clothes were covered in bloodstains. Zhao Paozi's condition was no better. Not only was he bruised and swollen, but his left hand was also severely twisted, clearly broken. How could this happen? Could it be that He Hui couldn't hold back last night and tried to escape overnight, only to get caught? Yesterday, when we separated at the cafeteria, these 2 were still fine. Yet just overnight, they had turned into this. Other than escaping and being caught, I couldn't think of any other reason. After having He Hui and Zhao Paozi dragged in front of the crowd, Abu, that scumbag, pointed at them with his baton, then looked up at all of us. It seems like I've been too merciful. I've been treating you so well, yet some people are still trying to escape. Hey, you're good. You're really good. The smile that was always present on the corner of Abu's mouth completely disappeared. His entire body was emanating a cold and menacing aura. This was the first time I had seen Abu like this in all my time in the compound. Stripped of his disguise, that scumbag seemed even more frightening than before. Chapter 65. Who are the accomplices? A shocking twist. Not only did Abu's mask slipping make me fearful, but all the pigs in the 9th fraud group were too afraid to breathe. Let alone us, those pigs. Even Wu Minden and the other 4 deputy team leaders could only stand by with gloomy faces, not daring to let out a fart. I gave you food and water, tried my best not to let you get taken for organ harvesting and bloodletting, and even gave you opportunities to advance to senior salesman status. But what about you? Not only are you ungrateful, but you actually went insane and tried to escape. Tell me, how should I punish these 2 pigs who tried to escape, and how should I deal with all of you? Abu used the baton in his hand to point at He Hui and Zhao Paozi, then pointed the baton at all of us. At this time, no one would be stupid enough to be a troublemaker. In fact, in order to avoid being noticed by Abu, that scumbag, almost everyone wished they could bury their heads in their crotches. Deputy team leaders A-Tai and Wu Minden, these 2 are from your groups, right? Tell me, how should we deal with them? Seeing that all of us, pigs, were just lowering our heads and acting like ostriches, Abu turned to Wu Minden and A-Tai, the 2 deputy team leaders. We absolutely cannot be lenient with these 2 lowly pigs. Since they want to run so badly, why don't we chop off their legs and throw them in the water prison, and let them run all they want in there? Being personally named by Abu, A-Tai gnashed his teeth, glanced at He Hui and Zhao Paozi, and immediately made a malicious suggestion. What does deputy team leader Wu Minden think? Abu, that scumbag, curled his lips in disagreement, then looked at Wu Minden with a burning gaze. It's too good for them just to chop off their legs. I think we should peel off their skins and make flags out of them to show all the pigs in the compound what the consequences of trying to escape are. Listening to these scumbags discuss it, even I was chilled to my core. I gained an even deeper understanding of how monstrous these scumbags were. Those were 2 living human beings. In the mouths of Wu Minden and those scumbags, they seemed to be less than a dog. Heh, both deputy team leaders' suggestions are very good. But it's too good for them just to chop off their legs and peel off their skins. We have to take care of their accomplices as well. As soon as Abu, that scumbag, said this, I instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Could it be that He Hui and Zhao Paozi had implicated Wang Lingling and me? I subconsciously exchanged a look with Wang Lingling. Her face was also very grim. Damn! Could it be that Abu, that scumbag, really believed what he, Hui, and the others said? At that moment, my whole heart was clenched into a fist. My right hand, hidden in my sleeve, was tightly gripping the dagger. If I hadn't completed my sales, it would have been fine. But once I was associated with an attempted escape, that meant one foot was on the organ harvesting surgery table, and the other was in the gates of hell. There was no possibility of surviving. If He Hui and Zhao Paozi were to implicate me, today might be the day when my blood would flow. What? Does the team leader mean that these two lowly pigs have accomplices? Wu Mindan's eyes twitched, and he stepped forward to kick Zhao Paozi hard, asking with a look of surprise. Having all my attention on them, I clearly felt that Wu Mindan, that scumbag, had glanced in my direction out of the corner of his eye. Over the past week, whenever He Hui and Zhao Paozi ate in the cafeteria, they would sit with me. Many people had seen it. This was something that couldn't be hidden. In addition, I was now the top salesman of Wu Mindan, that scumbag's group. With the scumbag's cunning, he certainly had some knowledge of the people around me. Of course there are accomplices, and there's more than one. Abu, that scumbag, nodded firmly, raising his eyes to look at all of us pigs surrounding him. Whether it was because I was guilty or not, I had the feeling that Abu was looking at Wang Lingling and me. More than one accomplice. Wasn't he talking about Wang Lingling and me? What should we do? It seems that Abu, that scumbag, seems to know something. Will these Myanmar scumbags listen to my explanations? I'm about to get rid of my pig status and become a temporary telecom trainer in a few days. It won't be long before I find a chance to escape this hellhole alive. On the surface, I was unmoved, but my heart was becoming more and more flustered. When I couldn't see any hope, I wouldn't mind going all in and just fighting it out. But now that the hope of escaping the compound alive was getting bigger and bigger, I was no longer willing to lose my life here. Wang Lingling seemed to have noticed my unease. Subtly, she gripped my right hand and gave me a look that said, "Be patient." I took a deep breath, barely suppressing the unease and irritability in my heart as I waited anxiously for the final result. It wasn't the final verdict yet. Perhaps everything was just in my imagination. Although some of you have failed to live up to my good intentions and have tried to escape like the pigs you are, I am still willing to give you one last chance. Those who conspired with these two to plan the escape, as long as you step forward, I can spare your lives. Abu's eyes, which seemed to be able to see through people's hearts, quickly swept over everyone. I couldn't tell if he really knew something or was just bluffing. No one spoke, and no one stepped forward. For this result, Abu seemed to have already expected it, and without being angry, opened his mouth again. I gave you the chance, but you just had to hold on to your wishful thinking. Abu showed that signature boy-next-door smile again, and used his baton to casually point at a few people in the crowd. Immediately, Myanmar scumbags dragged them out. Team leader, it's not me. I've never thought about escaping. It's a setup. I don't know those two at all. Team leader Jing, save me. The 5 people who were dragged out by the Myanmar scumbags were all looking terrified and cried out that they were wronged. What the hell was going on? When I saw who the 5 people being dragged out were, I instantly felt like my brain had stopped working. Moreover, one of these 5 people was a familiar face. Fat Biao, an A-level salesman living in a single room on the 3rd floor. How did he suddenly get mixed up with He Hui and Zhao Paozi? Although I didn't have any interaction with the other 4 people, I did remember their status level. Including Fat Biao, the lineup of the 5 people dragged out of the crowd was a truly impressive one. 3 A-level salesmen and 2 B-level salesmen. Even if this wasn't the critical moment for competing for the position of team leader of the 10th fraud group, these types of salesmen were treasures of each group during ordinary times. That these high-level salesmen would be stupid enough to conspire to escape, only an idiot would believe. What the hell is going on? At this moment, my heart was filled with extreme confusion. Chapter 66, a warning, chopped off hands and feet. 3 A-level salesmen plus 2 B-level salesmen. Even if their brains were clamped by their sphincters, they would not conspire to escape with 2 D-level salesmen who were completely unrelated to them. Team leader, there must be some kind of misunderstanding. Given their salesman level, how could they possibly do something so stupid as trying to escape? No one answered the confusion in my heart, but someone was the first to step forward to speak up for Fat Biao and the others. When I saw Deputy Team Leader Jing, with a shocked and anxious expression, step forward to plead, I suddenly remembered that all 5 of those dragged out were from the first group. Could it be? Seeing this, I instantly had some guesses in my mind, but I couldn't be sure yet. Stupid? I think their escape plan is very thorough. First, they would pretend to go to the toilet to kill the guards and steal their guns. Then, they would use today's delivery of supplies to secretly hide in the truck to slip out of the compound. Even if the guards at the checkpoints discovered them, they could still use the guns they stole to resist. TSK. Deputy Team Leader A Jing, listen to that. The logic of this plan is so clear. Although Abu, that scumbag, was smiling, everyone present could feel the iciness and killing intent in his voice. No. I'm saying that there's no way Fat Biao and the other four could have been involved. It must have been those two pigs implicating them. De Jing, that scumbag, was so anxious that his eyes were a bit red. He wished he could swallow He Hui and Zhao Paozi whole right now. Those were 3 A-level and 2 B-level salesmen. Normally, their combined sales would be at least 1.5 million. If he forced them to go all out, reaching 2 million was definitely not difficult. If the charge of escaping was confirmed today, even if they didn't die, they would have a layer of their skin peeled off. Not to mention, they would certainly be missing some body parts. And they could also end up in the water prison. De Jing, that scumbag, didn't really care if a few of his underling pigs died. However, at this critical juncture of competing for the position of team leader of the 10th fraud group, if Fat Biao and the other four were injured by the punishment, they would definitely not be able to continue to make sales. If he lost approximately 2 million in total sales at once, then what point was there in competing for the position of team leader? What Deputy Team Leader A Jing said is reasonable. It's true that there's the possibility you mentioned. However, those two also confessed that their accomplices were hiding weapons on their bodies and were planning to use those hidden weapons to kill our men. So, whether they were falsely implicating them or not, a search will tell us. Not giving A Jing, that scumbag, a chance to continue speaking, Wu Mindin waved his hand. Someone quickly stepped forward, and with a terrified look from Fat Biao, they pushed him to the ground and took off his clothes and pants in public. Seeing this scene, my heart also tightened, and I was so scared that I almost threw out the dagger hidden in my sleeve on the spot. Hiding the dagger in my sleeve was one of my biggest secrets. Apart from Wu Mindin, that scumbag, no one else in the entire compound knew about the dagger I was carrying. I hadn't even told Wang Lingling about this yet. Team leader, a switchblade has been found on this pig. As expected, the switchblade hidden on Fat Biao's body was searched out. Deputy Team Leader A Jing, do you still think that they were falsely implicating them? Abu played with the switchblade in his hand, looking at A Jing with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. At this moment, A Jing, that scumbag, had a face so dark it seemed like water was going to drip from it. Although he wanted to defend Fat Biao, now that there was evidence and witnesses, he didn't know what to say in front of everyone. He couldn't tell everyone in public that the switchblade on Fat Biao was given to him by him. Earlier, I gave you a chance to confess yourselves, but none of you cherished it. This knife looks quite sharp, so I'll just use it to cut the tendons of your hands and feet, you pigs. That way, you won't keep thinking about escaping. Seeing A Jing's face was dark as he pursed his lips, Abu's eyes flashed with sarcasm, and he snorted with a smile, throwing the switchblade to one of his trusted men. The latter took the switchblade and, without saying anything, walked towards Fat Biao. Team Leader A Jing, save me. As soon as the words of begging for help came out of his mouth, his left ankle was slashed, immediately causing Fat Biao to let out a pig-like scream. Team Leader A Jing, you said that you would protect me no matter what. You can't break your promise. Team Leader A Jing. Fat Biao was truly desperate as his tendon was cut. He crawled towards A Jing desperately. The Myanmar scumbag who did the cutting used his eyes to ask Abu for instructions. When he saw that the expression on the latter's face did not change, he stepped forward, grabbed Fat Biao's other foot, and then with another swing of the blade, cut his tendon as well. A Jing, you bastard. Are you not going to help me? I will tell everyone about your... Bang! Fat Biao stared at A Jing with malice. Just as he had started to speak, a bullet hit him in the chest, and he was no longer able to continue speaking. You tried to escape, and you even dared to curse at me? You're courting death. After shooting Fat Biao, A Jing gnashed his teeth and cursed angrily, then lifted his hand and shot again. With 2 bullets in his chest, Fat Biao could only spit out blood from his mouth. He couldn't say another word. What a vicious scumbag. I gasped inwardly, feeling my scalp tingle. Anyone with eyes could see that A Jing, that scumbag, had pulled out his gun in public to kill him to silence him. However, Abu smiled as if he hadn't noticed his intentions at all and casually asked, Deputy Team Leader A Jing, what do you think we should do with the other 4? These lowly pigs dared to plot to escape. We absolutely cannot be lenient with them. Ajing's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the remaining 4. His expression was like that of someone whose mother had just died. Okay, let's listen to Deputy Team Leader Ajing then. Abu's eyes lit up, and he immediately ordered someone to bring an axe to hand it to him. Since they are all pigs under your command, then please, Deputy Team Leader Ajing, do it yourself. Chop off their hands and feet. When the 4 unlucky guys heard this, they were so scared that their limbs went limp and they knelt on the ground, begging for mercy like madmen. However, Abu didn't even look at them. From start to finish, his gaze had been on Ajing's face. Abu's actions had me a bit confused. I could tell that he wanted to take advantage of this to punish Ajing, while at the same time warning the other 3 deputy team leaders. But no matter what, Fat Biao and the other 4 were A-level and B-level salesmen. Didn't he consider the sales performance of the entire 9th group? Killing 5 core salesmen at once, the first group that Ajing was in charge of would definitely suffer heavy losses and would completely lose the qualification to compete for the team leader position of the 10th fraud group. Could that be what Abu, that scumbag, really wanted? Publicly finding the switchblade on Fat Biao was equivalent to grabbing Ajing, that scumbag, by the handle. The worst thing was that it also involved an attempted escape. If he really went into details, even if Ajing was a deputy team leader, he would probably get what was coming to him. Even if he knew that Abu wanted to use him as a warning to others, Ajing, that scumbag, had to bite the bullet. Then, in front of everyone, Ajing, with a bleeding heart, personally chopped off the hands and feet of the other 4 men. The bloody and cruel scene terrified at least a dozen people to the point of wetting themselves or vomiting. Even though I thought that my heart was already strong enough, I was still chilled to the bone and shaking with fear when I personally saw 4 people have their limbs chopped off. Chapter 67. In the end, I couldn't escape this calamity. The 4 unfortunates whose hands and feet had been hacked off weren't cleared away. Instead, they were left there to scream and wail. Each of their cries and moans was a torment, a torture, for everyone present. Perhaps that was precisely the result that bastard Abu was aiming for. Fat Biao was riddled with bullets. The other 4 had their limbs severed, leaving only He Hui and Zhao Paozi. These 2 escaped piglets are from your respective groups. The punishment should be carried out by you 2 personally. So, will it be Deputy Group Leader Wu Minding who goes first, or Deputy Group Leader A Tai? After dealing with Fat Biao and the others, that bastard Abu turned to Wu Minding and A Tai of the second group, smiling menacingly. I'll go first. Before Wu Minding could even speak, A Tai snatched up the axe that was already stained crimson with blood and raised it, ready to bring it down on Zhao Paozi's head. If that axe had landed, even with Zhao Paozi's sturdy build, it would likely take half his life. Was I just going to stand by and watch Zhao Paozi get hacked to death? I gritted my teeth, a bitter feeling welling up inside me. But what could I do in this situation? Just being spared had already felt like a stroke of good fortune. Hold on. Just as A Tai lifted the axe, ready to strike, that bastard Abu, for reasons unknown, suddenly stopped him. Under the questioning gazes of everyone, Abu smiled and explained, I suddenly remembered that these 2 seemed to be lackeys of some level of sales rep. How about we let their master do the honors? Fuck. 1 second I was agonizing with relief. The next my whole body was prickling with dread. So much for staying out of it. In the end, I couldn't escape this after all. He Hui and Zhao Paozi had been following me for so long, and there were plenty of people who knew it. There was no way I could hide this time. And besides, had Abu really just suddenly remembered this? No, that bastard had definitely known all along. Under the scrutiny of everyone, I had no choice but to step forward, my heart pounding. 086, I remember you. You've been doing well lately. Your performance is improving rapidly. You're smart. Keep it up. I have high hopes for you. As soon as I approached, that bastard Abu, in front of Wu Minding and the others, patted me on the shoulder with a smile, his admiration barely concealed. Thank you, Group Leader. My achievements today are all thanks to your and Deputy Group Leader Wu's brilliant leadership, I said, forcing a humble, flattering smile. Out of the corner of my eye, I glanced at Wu Minding, whose expression didn't look too pleasant. Abu, who had been warmly praising and encouraging me just seconds ago, suddenly changed his tone. What he said next nearly scared me to death. Some people say you also want to escape? I tried to explain, but was cut off after just one word. Of course, I don't believe it. But what others think is not so easily controlled. so I'm giving you a chance to prove your innocence. Abu's smile didn't falter as he snapped his fingers, and someone set up a video camera that I recognized all too well. Just now, Deputy Group Leaders Wu Minding also mentioned that these two should have one leg cut off and be thrown into the water prison, while the other one be skinned and made into a flag. Now, let the show begin. Abu smiled and made a gesture. Then, with a wave of his hand, stepped back behind the camera with the other deputy group leaders. In front of me was only Fat Biao's corpse, the four unfortunates with severed limbs, and He Hui and Zhao Paozi, their hands tied behind their backs. Oh, and don't forget to put on a good show. These videos will be posted on foreign websites for people to watch and make money. If you perform well, maybe some big Hollywood director will take notice, bringing the camp an Academy Award. Just as I was staring blankly at the switchblade and the axe, unsure what to do, that bastard Abu's sinister laughter rang out behind me. Hearing this, my heart sank to the bottom. If there was any room for explanation for the previous video, I would have a chance at a lenient sentence when I returned to China to confess. But if I dared to actually cut off the legs of He Hui and Zhao Paozi, then skin them, even if I returned home safely, there was no escaping the law, no matter how I plead. Such a cruel and heinous act would surely mean a life sentence at best, or more likely, a bullet to the head. After living comfortably for over a week, eating well, I could clearly feel that both my physical and mental state had returned to how it had been before being tricked into the scam camp. I might have even gained a few pounds. If not for the piglet uniform, people might even think I was a member of the camp management. In my current state of body and mind, who would believe I was forced to do it? 086, you're a smart guy. Don't do anything foolish. This is your only chance to prove your innocence. If you don't know how to treasure it, then look at those piglets in front of you with severed limbs. Think about what the consequences will be. Seeing that I was hesitant, that bastard Abu calmly lit a cigarette, smiling as he reminded me. What should I do? At that moment, I was torn by conflicting emotions. In a way, He Hui and Zhao Paozi were my friends. Even if they were strangers, I couldn't bring myself to do such inhuman things as cutting off their limbs and making a flag out of their skin. But if I didn't do it, then I would be the one having my hands and feet cut off. And even if I was soft-hearted and let them off, I would be thrown in along with them, and it wouldn't improve their fate. Thinking this, I extended a trembling right hand and slowly picked up the blood-stained axe on the ground. Ah Hui Paozi, do you have any last wishes? If I ever get the chance, I will definitely help you fulfill them, I said, feeling incredibly wretched, while looking at the two with the bloody axe in my hand. What happened? Today was a fait accompli. The only thing I could do for them was that if I had a chance to escape, when I returned to China, I would try to help fulfill their last wishes. Ugh, ugh, ugh. He Hui suddenly raised his head and stared at me intently, his eyes filled with hatred. When he opened his mouth, blood dripped out, and all he could make was a muffled sound. Ugh, 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 ugh. He Hui opened his mouth wide and made wild sounds at me, like a beast that wished to pounce on me and tear me to pieces. If his hands and feet weren't tied, he would have jumped on me and bitten through my throat. Chapter 68. Another twist, not extinction but release. While He Hui was constantly making his muffled sounds, I realized that his tongue had been cut out. No wonder that when they were dragged out by the Myanmar bastards, they had kept their heads down and not said a word. Abu must have feared that they would blurt out something and ruin his plans, so he cut out their tongues in advance. That beastly, inhuman scum. I'll curse his ancestors 18 times over. He Hui must have thought I'd betrayed them, hence the look that would have consumed me if given the chance. I wasn't mad at his misunderstanding. I even felt a pang of pain that nearly made me cry on the spot. If I stayed in this hellhole, wouldn't my fate be the same as his today? If I hadn't noticed that He Hui and Zhao Paozi had their tongues cut out, maybe I would still have some unrealistic fantasies. But once I noticed that detail, I already knew these two were dead. No matter what. And while I seemed safe and sound, one of my feet was already stepping into the operating room for kidney harvesting. If I wasn't careful, I'd suffer an equally horrific fate. Clutching the axe in my hand, listening to He Hui's constant groans, I really wanted to just chop him dead with it. Not to eliminate a threat, but to release him. However, I dared not do that. I knew there were many eyes on me. If I dared do something out of line, I would suffer the same fate as them. I don't know why it became like this, but what I want to say is, I didn't betray you. Now that we have been tricked into this place, we should have been ready to face any outcome. If one day we can return home, I'll find your families and try my best to make amends. I whispered to He Hui, so only he, Zhao Paozi, and I could hear. Then, I stomped my foot onto He Hui's tied legs and continued, if you don't want to die too painfully, as I cut off your arm, act like you're trying to kill me, then I can quickly finish you off. After these final words, I no longer had time to worry if he understood. I then turned away from Abu and the others, and raised the axe and brought it down heavily upon He Hui's left arm. Thud. Ow. With a bone-chilling sound, and He Hui's anguished grunt, his left arm was chopped off instantly. Ah. The excruciating pain made He Hui's body struggle violently. Off balance, I was knocked to the ground. The next moment, He Hui, dragging his bloodied stump, pounced on me with his mouth wide open. I didn't know if he understood what I had just said, or if he truly wanted to bite me to death. In that crucial moment, I screamed instinctively and swung the axe wildly. By sheer luck, the axe landed on He Hui's foot. It not only left a deep, bone-deep gash, but also cut the ropes binding his legs. Freed from the ropes, He Hui, with his arms and feet, let out a howl and pounced upon me like a mad dog. Before I could raise the axe again, he was on top of me. He Hui's bloodshot eyes didn't feign his fury, and just as I thought he would try to kill me, his attack was actually a ruse. His true purpose was to seize the axe in my hand. As I tried to protect my head and struggled wildly, I hadn't realized that He Hui's real plan was to take the axe. In a moment, He Hui seized the axe with another howl and lunged at Abu and the others behind me like a rabid dog. Zhao Paozi, who had been kneeling and waiting to be dealt with, quickly stood and leapt, headbutting that scum Wu Minding. The scene was thrown into chaos, and Abu and the other bastards were all caught off guard. Bang! 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 At that crucial moment, A Jing, who was holding a gun, was the first to react. He raised his hand and fired several shots at He Hui and Zhao Paozi. When I finally managed to scramble to my feet and turned to look, both of them were lying dead in a pool of their own blood. Abu and the other 4 deputy group leaders' faces were terribly grave. The most unfortunate was that scum, A Tai, who was struck by He Hui's axe in the chaos. I regretted that it only carved a deep gash on his back, but failed to split his head open. Deputy Group Leader A Jing, your cover-up is too obvious. Do you think all of us are stupid? After finally regaining control of the situation, Abu was the first to react. He pointed at A Jing and shouted angrily. No, I didn't want to cover anything up. The situation was too critical. I shot to protect everyone. Also, I don't know these 2 piglets at all. A Jing, shocked by Abu's anger, immediately put his gun away and explained. Bullshit. Before, I didn't say anything when you killed that short and fat piglet from your group as a cover-up. I didn't expect that you would do this again. Deputy Group Leader A Jing, what truth are you trying to hide? Abu demanded sharply. Group Leader, A Jing tried to explain, but was interrupted by Abu's roar. I now seriously suspect that you have colluded with other groups in this camp, secretly bribing piglets and harming the interests of our camp. Guards, seize A Jing. I will personally report this to the 3 supervisors for a thorough investigation. If you have anything to say, explain it to them. Abu did not give A Jing any chance to explain, and he waved his hand, signaling for his guards to take him away. Everyone could see that Abu clearly came prepared. The purpose of today's temporary meeting wasn't the small fries, He Hui and Zhao Paozi, but it was A Jing. Everyone was even more terrified by this and didn't dare to even breathe, for fear of attracting trouble. I also quietly sighed in relief. There was no way I could cut off He Hui and Zhao Paozi's hands and feet and then skin them with my own hands. I was a living human being, not like these beasts. Just when I thought that this was finally over, Abu started walking toward me. Chapter 69. Another countdown. To hell with the countdown. The camera is already set up. Although there are no more supporting actors, the show must go on, Abu said with a twisted smile as he approached me. He gestured with his chin towards the 4 unfortunate souls who had their hands and feet hacked off. For a moment, I couldn't understand what he meant. What the hell did that bastard want? In the next few days, the water prison will surely be overcrowded. There's no space for these pieces of trash. Go on. Finish what you started just now. Pick up the switchblade and slit their throats. Drain the blood of these lowly piglets. While I was completely dumbfounded, that bastard Abu made his request again. Slit the throats of those 4 unfortunate ones? My face instantly changed, and my whole body went cold. If I could not bring myself to hurt He Hui and Zhao Paozi, could I really bring myself to hurt those unfortunates with their limbs cut off? 10, 9, 8. Abu didn't say anything more. He started counting down, while calmly pulling out his personal gun and pointing it at my head. Another countdown. To hell with these damn countdowns. Under the threat of death, I had no choice. I gritted my teeth, picked up the switchblade on the ground, and walked with difficulty towards those 4 unfortunates. Just think of it as freeing them. I need to survive and escape from this hellhole. My parents are waiting for me at home. I squeezed the switchblade in my hand, trying again and again to convince myself. 3, 2. As the countdown reached its last 2 numbers, I knelt on one knee in front of one of the unfortunates. I grabbed his hair with shaking hands and slowly placed the switchblade against his neck. 1. Thwack. As that bastard Abu shouted the last number, I squeezed my eyes shut in pain and moved the blade across his throat. The next second, a gush of scalding hot, sticky liquid sprayed onto my face and hands. The sticky fluid slowly cooled, becoming stickier. I knew it was the blood that had just come out of his body. I don't know when it began, but I could hear slow, meaningful claps behind me. That was truly a magnificent performance. The reaction was so realistic. Very well done. Keep going. Abu's laughter made me open my eyes and instantly wake up. At that moment, the man whose throat I had cut open was lying on the ground, twitching. His pupils were slowly losing their light. The blood that spilled from his neck soaked his clothes and flowed to my feet, wetting my pants. For some reason, my heart grew calmer as I witnessed his dying state. I did not vomit or feel as scared as I imagined. Perhaps it was because I had already taken a life not too long ago. Or perhaps it was because I had seen so much cruelty and gore today that I had become numb to it all. Of course, it was also possible that I convinced myself that killing him was a mercy, a release. Believe me, you will slowly become addicted to the thrill of controlling another's life and death. The moment you cut open someone's skin, tear through their muscles, and witness the eruption of hot blood is simply sublime. If it weren't for promising you the leading role today, I would have done it myself. Abu's voice whispered like the devil's voice in my ears as if trying to pull me into the abyss. His words were like magic, causing my brain to unconsciously try to feel and experience what he was saying. Fuck. Realizing the strange state I was in, I cursed silently and bit my tongue hard to snap back to reality. I now finally understood why some perverted serial killers become increasingly obsessed with killing. In this world, smoking can become addictive, playing mahjong can become addictive, and even taking drugs can become addictive. Anything can become an addiction, even killing. I'm just doing this for self-preservation. His hands and feet had already been cut off. Living on would have only been torture. I killed him to free him. I am not an animal. I'm not a perverted killer who enjoys murder. I just want to live and escape this living hell. I told myself these things repeatedly, trying my best to remain conscious. This time, I didn't need that bastard Abu to remind me or threaten me. I held the blood-soaked switchblade and walked quickly to the other 3. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Grabbed the hair, slit the throat, all in one swift motion. This time it only took me a dozen seconds to cut the throats of the remaining 3. This clean-cut and decisive action rendered even Abu speechless for a moment. The 200 or so piglets standing in front of me were already looking at me with sheer terror in their eyes. I didn't see a single person dare to meet my gaze. What I had done was just child's play to Abu, who had countless lives on his hands. Soon, he regained his composure. Did you capture all the details? Abu asked, after giving me a meaningful smile. He then offered me a cigarette, lit it for me, and then lit one himself before he confirmed. Don't worry, group leader. All the details were captured clearly. Hearing the confirmation, Abu's smile widened. Keep up the good work. You will slowly find that this is truly paradise. I'm giving you the switchblade, which has witnessed your growth and contribution. Ha 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 ha. After patting me on the shoulder, Abu finally announced the end of the meeting. The piglets, under the guidance of the deputy group leaders, quickly returned to their offices. Everyone seemed to have forgotten about the breakfast. They didn't finish in the cafeteria. Of course, having just experienced such a bloody scene, perhaps no one could have eaten anything anyway. I stood there, staring at the 4 corpses, with blood still dripping from their necks. Then, I picked up the switchblade and examined it, and I felt completely conflicted. Even now, I didn't know how things had suddenly turned out this way. At that moment, the only thing I was certain of was that that bastard Abu had not just recorded that video to satisfy his perverted desires. He was trying to control me. That bastard was trying to tell me that, even if I could somehow escape one day, I would never be able to return home. With 5 lives on my back, I would surely be executed upon my return. No, even if it meant execution, I had to escape this hellhole. I had to return home and see my parents for the last time. Even if it meant death, I would die on my country's 9.6 million square kilometers. No one, nothing, could dampen my determination to escape this hellhole. Chapter 70. Even if I escape, can I really go home? Ever since the temporary meeting in the morning, I became a pariah after Abu forced me to slit the throats of 4 people. The majority of people looked at me with fear in their eyes. Not just the piglets, but even some of the Myanmar bastards looked at me with a hint of fear. Especially the people sitting at the desks near mine. They behaved carefully all day long, not even daring to look at me. When I went to the cafeteria for lunch and dinner, no one was willing, or rather dared, to sit at the same table with me except for Wang Lingling. All of this was because I had 4 more lives on my hands. I didn't care too much about the fear and dread of those people. It was just as well. At least it would keep the ignorant fools from bothering me. But the tragic end of He Hui and Zhao Paozi weighed on my heart like a huge rock. All day long, I kept wondering about the same question. Why were He Hui and Zhao Paozi arrested without any warning? How did that bastard Abu know they were planning to escape? Only the 4 of us knew the whole plan from start to finish. He Hui and Zhao Paozi couldn't possibly have told anyone. By this morning, I had already vaguely suspected something. I just didn't want to admit it. After having dinner with Wang Lingling in the cafeteria, we silently went back to the dormitory. Was it you? After closing the dormitory door, I sat on the bed, lit a cigarette, and looked at Wang Lingling with a complex expression before asking directly. Wang Lingling was taken aback. What? You know what I'm talking about. I really can't think of why else that bastard Abu would know that He Hui and Zhao Paozi were planning to escape. Why would you do this? I bit my cigarette, my voice becoming cold without me realizing it. I thought Wang Lingling would deny it, but she was just silent for a moment before she admitted it. Why? I clenched my fists, my teeth grinding. If not for Wang Lingling's betrayal, perhaps He Hui and Zhao Paozi wouldn't have died. If they were lucky, they might even have already escaped the camp. Even if they died, they wouldn't have died such horrific deaths. Brother Chong, you're so smart. Why can't you see it? He Hui and the others knew that they could not meet their daily performance quota, and they had already lost their nerve yesterday. Their thought of escaping the camp was nothing but a pipe dream. And they wanted to drag you and me to escape with them. Just for that alone, they were like ticking time bombs. In order to not be implicated, in order to one day be able to escape this hellhole alive, He Hui and Zhao Paozi must die. As Wang Lingling spoke, her expression was calm, as if the 2 lives she was referring to were trivial matters. Even though I knew that what she said made sense, my heart still felt heavy. After all, they were my only 2 friends in the camp besides Yu Xiu and Wang Lingling. Brother Chong, I know that you are inherently kind. You cannot bring yourself to do some things and are too proud to do some other things. In the future, I will handle all of the messy things that you don't want to get your hands dirty with. In order to survive, so that one day we can escape this hellhole alive, I'm willing to do anything, even if I have to become a beast and go to the deepest parts of hell after death. Wang Lingling gently sat next to me, took the half-finished cigarette from my lips, took a big drag, and then smiled brightly. I stared at her for a solid 10 seconds, then let out a long sigh, not knowing what to say. Wang Lingling's mentality had changed drastically over the past few weeks. She was losing more and more of her humanity and morality. If things continued this way, it probably wouldn't be long before the last trace of human decency in her would disappear completely. Being ruthless, unscrupulous, and having no taboos certainly allows her to live better in the camp. But if a person loses their last trace of humanity, are they still even considered a person? Even if we were to escape this camp one day, then what? What would she do afterwards? I didn't know if what Wang Lingling was doing was right or wrong, but I was certain that the worsening of her mentality would be of great help for our escape. Although I didn't want to admit it, Wang Lingling had slowly transformed from a personal slave to my partner, and my trust in her had increased from 1 or 2 points to 6 or 7. So, I needed to say something to warn her. Thinking this, I lit another cigarette for myself, organized my thoughts, and asked her meaningfully again, Lingling, have you thought about what you will do if you manage to escape the camp? Wang Lingling's smoking paused, and she looked confused. What about you, Brother Chong? Wang Lingling imitated me, pinched the cigarette, but with her index finger and thumb, took a big drag, and asked me back with a complex expression. Me? Of course I'm going home. My parents only have me, their only son. I need to go back no matter what. I was caught off guard for a second, and then said decisively, Go home, haha. Can we even go home anymore? Brother Chong, including the 4 people you killed today, you have 5 lives on your back, and your fraud amount is more than 1 million. When we manage to escape this hellhole, the amount of our fraud will probably be over 10 million. You will only face death when you return home. You will surely be executed. Wang Lingling's bitter smile deepened. Although my hands are clean for the time being, I will probably get a life sentence. And the fact that my hands are clean now doesn't mean they will still be when we escape the camp. And besides, I've been humiliated and tortured by these Myanmar bastards so many times. My body is 10 times more filthy than those streetwalkers. Brother Chong, do you think I can still go home? Will any man want me in the future? Wang Lingling's words stabbed me in the heart like a knife. Yes, could we still really go home? At that moment, my originally unwavering belief in returning home was slightly shaken. Could it really be like what I said, where I would go home to see my parents and then be executed? I started to get more frustrated and anxious. After all, I had just graduated from university this year, and my life had just begun. But if I didn't go home, where else could I go? I couldn't just float around like a lost soul in the Golden Triangle, could I? Chapter 71. A Sudden Turn of Events. In the cyber scam compounds of northern Myanmar, human life is the cheapest commodity. The deaths of He Hui and Zhao Paozi were just minor blips to me. To those Burmese scum, they probably didn't even register as a blip. Life had to go on. No matter how I felt inside. The next day I woke up, life resumed its usual rhythm. Regardless of whether I'd ever make it home, I had to figure out how to survive first. Wang Lingling continued to slack off, keeping her daily earnings between 50,000 and 70,000. I, on the other hand, was pushing myself to the limit to generate revenue. I had to hit at least 3 million in sales this week, which meant I couldn't target ordinary people. Fortunately, the list provided by that scum Wu Minden was mostly of high-quality leads. On the first day, I identified over a dozen targets who were either wealthy, involved in shady activities, or had skeletons in their closets. For each of these individuals, I created a customized cyber scam plan. In just 3 days, I raked in 1.4 million in sales. That left me just 1.6 million short of the initial 3 million goal. Due to that scum Abu's mess, the first group's aging had suffered heavy losses, making it virtually impossible for them to compete for the leadership of the 10th cyber scam group. Meanwhile, my performance was outstanding. These past couple of days, that scum Wu Minden was smiling ear to ear, and his attitude towards me had become even warmer. Not only was I getting good cigarettes, liquor, and tea every day, but my food standards had also been significantly improved. In fact, my meals as an A-level salesman were even better than those of the S-level star salesmen who lived in the top-floor suites. Of course, given my performance these last 3 days, I had already exceeded the threshold of an S-level salesman, so it wasn't unwarranted that I was enjoying the privileges of a star salesman ahead of time. 3 days of raking in over 1.4 million, coupled with publicly slitting the throats of 4 pigs, had made me famous throughout the entire cyber scam compound. Even the leaders and deputy leaders of the other 8 cyber scam groups knew of my existence. That scum Wu Minden even told me that the compound's 3 top managers had started to pay attention to me. I didn't know if this was good news or bad, and I didn't have the energy to think about it right now. The only thought on my mind was to figure out how to get Wu Minden onto the position of leader of the soon-to-be-formed 10th cyber scam group. Only then would I have a chance to escape the fate of being a pig at the mercy of others. The intense and busy time always flies by. Before I knew it, it was the last day of the week. After breakfast with Wang Lingling, I lit a cigarette and strolled with everyone else to the office, ready to start the day's work. Unexpectedly, before we could even officially begin, Wu Minden stormed in with an extremely grim look on his face, ordering everyone to stop what they were doing. Could there be another turn of events? Looking at Wu Minden's face, so dark it was practically black, my heart sank. I had a very bad feeling. I just got news that the first group, the Phone and Internet Information Group, surpassed 8 million in total group sales yesterday. The 5th group has also hit 7.3 million. Several other groups are also very close behind. Which means, with our group's current earnings, we are only barely in 3rd place. And if I'm not mistaken, by 6 o'clock this afternoon, those group sales will have climbed significantly. As expected, his words silenced everyone, including me. In the past 6 days, I had amassed over 2.6 million in total sales, single-handedly pushing the group's revenue to 7 million. I thought that with such outstanding performance, getting that scum Wu Minden into the position of leader of the 10th cyberscam group was a done deal. I never thought that my incredibly impressive performance was only good enough for third place. No wonder that scum looked so grim when he came into the office. I don't care how you do it, everyone needs to generate at least 40,000 in sales today. By 6 o'clock this afternoon, anyone who hasn't met the goal will have a hand chopped off. I mean it, even the King of Heaven won't change my mind. Wu Minden's gaze was like a knife, scanning across everyone's faces. Everyone he looked at felt a chill down their spine, wishing they could bury their heads in their pants. My heart also skipped a beat. I silently looked at the rest of them. That scum Wu Minden had never shown any mercy in the past 6 days, and there were only about 10 people in this office who weren't injured, including me, which meant that at least 80% of the members of this group had either had a finger or two chopped off, several toes amputated, or an ear sliced off. Wu Minden was at least somewhat restrained, not chopping off hands or feet. After all, he still needed these people to help him compete for the leadership position. But today was the last day. If he didn't manage to become the leader of the 10th cyber scam group, these people would be worth nothing to him. So he would have no problem resorting to extreme measures. This was an extremely rare opportunity. If he failed to seize it and get promoted to leader, it would take another 2 or 3 years, or even longer, to get such a chance again. Keep an eye on these pigs. Anyone caught slacking off today will be beaten to death. Wu Minden glared at everyone one last time, gave this order, and then called me to his office. Although I had been to his office several times recently, every time, I behaved with the utmost respect and caution. I would never become arrogant because I had generated more than 2 million in revenue in less than a week. That scum Wu Minden was a very vain person. I'd realized that a long time ago. We're on the same team. Don't be so stiff. Take a seat. After closing the door, that scum poured me a cup of tea and tossed me a cigarette. I immediately acted like I was deeply honored, thanking him profusely while smiling and lighting his cigarette. Damn, those bastards are going all out to compete for the leader position. I heard some groups are checking sales every 2 hours. Those who don't meet their targets get whipped or cut with a knife. They even have a doctor stationed in the office for that purpose. Several pigs have gone insane because of the pressure. Wu Minden took a big puff of his cigarette and started grumbling angrily. Checking sales every 2 hours? My heart skipped a beat. Just thinking about it made my scalp tingle. Even I couldn't guarantee that I could hit a sales target every 2 hours. Aren't the other leaders doing anything about it? This is essentially killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. If they kill or drive all these people crazy, who's going to generate revenue in the future? I had been curious about this for days, unable to understand why Abu and the other 8 cyber scam group leaders didn't step in. Chapter 72. The real intentions of the cyber scam compound's higher UPS. And the manager in charge of all the cyber scam operations in the compound hasn't intervened either. They just let the deputy leaders push the pigs to the breaking point, not caring if they kill a bunch of them. Based on Wu Minden's description, our group was relatively okay. Aside from Zhao Paozi, no one had died this week so far. The same couldn't be said for the other cyber scam groups. If one person died in each cyber scam group, that would be 30 or 40 deaths this week. And the number of people with severed fingers or sliced ears would be even higher. After this week, I reckon that no more than 20% of the people on the cyber scam side of the compound would remain completely unscathed. If I were a compound higher up, I would never do something this stupid. Unless, the moment I thought of all the possibilities, my heart turned to ice. If that was the case, my chances of escaping the compound alive had just been pushed back considerably. Hopefully, I'm just overthinking it. I could only reassure myself this way. But once that thought entered my mind, I couldn't shake it off. And the more I thought about it, the more likely it seemed. The higher-ups and masterminds of the cyber scam compound couldn't all be idiots. If I could figure this out, couldn't they? Or were they doing it on purpose? But if so, what were they trying to achieve? The more I thought, the more chaotic my mind became. Forget it. I'm just a pig. What's the point of thinking so much? The most important thing now is to get rid of my pig status. With this in mind, I subtly probed, Leader, is the process for transitioning from a pig to a sales trainer very complicated? That scum Wu Minden was also quite savvy, instantly picking up on my implied question. He simply smiled and said, Don't worry. What I promised you will be honored. As he spoke, he pulled a file out of his desk drawer and showed it to me. I've already prepared all the materials for you. Given your recent performance, your summary of fast sales, generation techniques, and experience, along with my personal recommendation, it shouldn't be a problem for you to shed your pig status and become a sales trainer within the group. As long as you continue to work hard today and become the top seller in the compound this week, I will submit this material this afternoon after work. To completely quell my concerns, that scum Wu Minden even let me look at the materials myself. I skimmed through them and found that scum hadn't lied to me about this. Thank you, leader. Don't worry, I will work twice as hard today and definitely push my earnings over 3 million. I put on a show of gratitude, patting my chest to guarantee my performance. No, 3 million is not enough. I need you to push your sales to 3.5 million, preferably 4 million directly. Wu Minden's smile faded as he put the materials back in the drawer and looked at me seriously. 4 million. My eyes twitched involuntarily. That scum sure thought highly of me. My total sales were only around 2.6 million right now. To hit 4 million, I needed to generate 1.4 million today. Leader, 4 million, that's just 2. My face immediately fell, and I spread my hands in frustration. It wasn't like I was trying to be difficult, but it was just too much to handle. Sigh. I know it's hard, and it's not that I want to push you. But the situation is dire. To be the top performing group, our group is at least 2 million short. Those lowly pigs can't be relied on. I estimate they can only complete 1 million in sales today at most. So the remaining 1 million or so will have to rely on you. Wu Minden sighed, tapping the table lightly with his fingers as if absent-mindedly. After a moment of silence, he continued. As long as you can get your sales to 4 million today, I guarantee that, regardless of whether I become the group leader or not, you will be a sales trainer. I knew, of course, that what he hadn't said was the key. In other words, if I didn't hit 4 million in sales, the chance of shedding my pig status and becoming a trainer would likely disappear. Even though I was cursing that scum's ancestors in my mind, I didn't dare show any sign of displeasure on my face. We were not equals. There was no fairness. Maybe in that scum Wu Minden's mind, giving me an opportunity to be a dog was already a great blessing. I'm filing this away. If I get the chance, I swear I will kill that scum. Suppressing the anger in my heart, I had no choice but to agree with a reluctant and expectant expression. The moment I left that scum's office, my face became completely grim. I touched the switchblade Abu had given me as a reward. I had almost lost it and stabbed that scum Wu Minden with it. Just relying on one landline phone to get more than 1.3 million in sales in one day? That scum Wu Minden sure has faith in me. I let out a long sigh. No matter how I felt in my heart, I could only rub my temples and return to the office to start today's scams. I had no confidence at all that I could generate over 1 million in a short day. My only option was to take it one step at a time and try to generate as much revenue as possible. Working with that scum Wu Minden was inherently like trying to negotiate with a tiger. I had anticipated a situation like this. To survive and escape this hellhole, even if there was only a sliver of hope, I had to try. What if I succeeded? Now that things had gotten to this point, I almost hoped my gut feeling was correct. The masterminds and higher-ups of the cyber scam compound had no reason to be unaware that initiating this cutthroat competition between so many deputy leaders was like killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. But they still did it. That meant they had a compelling reason to do so. I couldn't figure out the real intention behind using sales to determine who would be the leader of the 10th cyber scam group. But one thing was obvious. The sales figures from this week alone would equal or exceed what they usually made in an entire month. My group alone had made more than 7 million in sales in the last 6 days. There were a total of 36 subgroups within the compound's 9 cyber scam groups. How much money did that represent? I guessed conservatively that they had made more than 200 million. I even seriously suspected that the plan to establish the 10th cyber scam group was just a smokescreen. Their real goal was to raise a large amount of money quickly. I couldn't think of a better explanation. Chapter 73. A colossal deal breaks the record in the cyber scam compound. I didn't know if it was that the heavens had finally favored me, or that I'd pushed myself to an even higher level in the face of intense pressure. Around lunchtime, I successfully closed a massive deal. I later found out that this deal was far more significant than I could have imagined. The unlucky guy who got scammed was the brother-in-law of a local town leader, and he owned a plastic factory and a gravel pit. I impersonated an officer from law enforcement on the phone, and in less than 5 minutes, I had scared the man. He was extremely cooperative and repeatedly promised that he would cooperate with the investigation. What I didn't know was that this was an opportune coincidence. Just a day before I had called him, the poor guy's brother-in-law had been taken away for investigation. The guy had his own fair share of shady secrets and was deeply connected to his brother-in-law's illegal activities. After learning that his brother-in-law had been taken away for questioning, he had been so scared that he had not slept at all the night before. So, when he answered my scam call today, he was easily triggered by my increasingly professional scamming tactics and threatening language. I hope this guy has a few $100,000 in his bank account. I had developed a habit of going to the hallway for a smoke after each big deal. As the top seller in Wu Mindan's group, no Burmese scum dared to bother me over something as minor as smoking. I had just gotten up to stretch and had only walked a few steps away from my workstation when I saw that scum Wu Mindan walking in quickly, looking ecstatic. Before I could even react, that scum gave me a bone-crushing hug with a wide grin on his face. Bro, you're fucking amazing. Tell me, how did you do it? After almost suffocating me with his tight embrace, he let me go and asked loudly, his eyes shining brightly. Huh. Leader, are you talking about that deal I just closed? I began to understand. Did that last deal go for more than 300,000 or 400,000? I hadn't had very high hopes for that small-town leader's brother-in-law. I had planned to be content with 300,000 or 400,000. Including this deal, my total sales would just hit 3 million. But the way Wu Mindan was reacting suggested that this deal was much bigger than I had thought. I still didn't know how much that poor guy had transferred into the so-called secure account. It wasn't convenient to discuss such things on the phone. So, strictly speaking, we salesmen didn't know how much the victims had actually transferred. We had to wait for the Burmese scum in charge of accounting to inform us. Usually, the Burmese scum were very efficient and would inform us within 5 minutes. The fastest they've been. We even got real-time updates. In general, they were honest about the amount of each transaction. Since we pigs didn't get commissions, the Burmese scum had no reason to lie. 7,386,126.59. Bro, do you know you broke the record? You've made over 10 million in sales in a single week. You're the first in the history of the compound to do so. Wu Mindan's voice was trembling when he read out that long string of numbers. He looked at me with even more affection than if I were his own father. 7,386,126.59. I was completely stunned by that number. It wasn't just me. Everyone in the office had also stopped working, shocked by Wu Mindan's excited shout. The entire office of 50 people was dead silent. A moment later, gasps and shocked inhales began to fill the large office. After coming back to my senses, I could not believe my ears. It was as if I was dreaming. It all felt so surreal. Did a small-town factory owner really have that much money in his bank account? And even more unbelievable was that he had transferred all of it. 7 million with all the cents and change. He had completely cleaned out his bank account. It's locked in. This time, it's absolutely locked in. Let's see who else dares compete with me for the leader position. Ha 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 ha. Xiangzi, you really made our group proud. You might even have alerted the big boss. That scum Wu Mindan was so excited that he was almost incoherent, saying his innermost thoughts in front of everyone. This was the first time in a long time that a Burmese scum had called me by my name, instead of 086. Leader, can I have a cigarette? The surprise was too much. I can't seem to breathe. No matter how hard I tried to control myself, my heart was still beating like crazy, as if it was about to jump out of my chest. At this moment, I needed nicotine to suppress this intense excitement. Yes, you can more than have it. Wu Mindan laughed and immediately took out a pack of premium cigarettes from his pocket. His hands were also trembling as he pulled out 2 cigarettes. He lit them both and gave one to me. I took the cigarette he handed me and squeezed it, sucking it furiously. I kept inhaling until the end was burning hot, and there was no more air going through. In just one puff, the newly lit cigarette was reduced to half its size. As I exhaled a thick cloud of smoke, I gradually calmed down, and my heart rate slowed down. That scum Wu Mindan was not doing much better than me. He had finished his cigarette in just 2 puffs. This super deal of 7 million was more of a shock to me. But to that scum Wu Mindan, it was a wonderful surprise. With this deal, he could undoubtedly take the seat of the leader of the newly established 10th Cyber Scam Group, with the absolute advantage of the highest total group sales and the highest individual sales in the entire compound. Going from a deputy leader to a leader was definitely a qualitative leap in the cyber scam compound. Only when he became a leader of a cyber scam group would he be a real power figure in the compound. At that point, he would have the power of life and death over the entire group. If the cyber scam compound was an independent little state, the leader of a cyber scam group was like a governor of a region. Their power and status was unimaginably high. This small step from deputy leader to leader was like a carp leaping through the dragon gate. This was why all 36 deputy leaders in the compound were desperately working hard to boost sales. With a sudden windfall of 7 million in sales, how could that scum Wu Minden not be excited? Besides shock, of course, I was also very happy. For me, this astronomical achievement of breaking the single-week sales record of the entire cyber scam compound must mean that my life was saved, right? And taking this opportunity to shed my pig status and become a temporary sales trainer wouldn't be too much to ask, right? Chapter 74. A Sudden Change, a Choice of Life and Death. The news of my sudden massive deal not only drew that scum Wu Minden, but within minutes, even that son of a bitch Abu personally came with his men. That dog Abu also seemed very happy. After all, I was one of his salesmen. Strictly speaking, my big deal meant that the entire ninth group had generated significant revenue, which reflected well on him. Not bad. I knew I hadn't misjudged you. Abu's trademark neighborly smile was even more pronounced, and he patted my shoulder kindly in front of everyone, praising me. Thank you, leader. I just got lucky. Being able to close such a big deal is all thanks to your and Deputy Leader Wu's great leadership. In front of these two scumbags, I remained as humble, low-key, and cautious as ever. In the past week, after establishing a secret partnership with Wu Minden, I would occasionally show a relaxed side in front of him. But facing Abu, this smiling demon, I absolutely did not dare to let my guard down in the slightest. This scumbag's depravity and beastliness far exceeded Wu Minden's. If Wu Minden was a complete beast, then Abu was a devil in a beast's skin. Hee, you sure know how to talk. But your performance this week is definitely remarkable. If that 7 million plus deal today is luck, then those other 2 million in revenue are pure skill. According to the rules, starting today, you will officially be promoted to S-level star salesman. Tonight you can move directly to the penthouse suite and enjoy all the privileges of a star salesman. If this had been in the past, I might have been happy to hear that. But now his words made my heart sink again. What does being promoted to S-level star salesman mean? It meant that I was still just a pig. From Abu's tone, it didn't seem like he had any intention of letting me shed my pig status. I subconsciously looked towards Wu Minden. That scum clearly understood Abu's intention and immediately said, Leader, there's something I haven't had a chance to report to you. Given 086's outstanding sales abilities and the method for fast sales generation that he came up with, I'd like to recommend him to be a trainer for our phone and internet sales department. I originally planned to report it to you this afternoon. All the relevant materials are prepared, and they're in my office. If nothing unexpected happened, it was a done deal that Wu Minden would become the leader of the soon-to-be established 10th cyber scam group. As the #1 contributor to helping him secure that position, there was no way that scum would be willing to leave me in Abu's 9th cyber scam group. Most importantly, I had demonstrated exceptional cyber scam abilities in the past week. Leaving aside that 7 million plus mind-blowing deal today, my previous 6 days of generating over 2 million in sales was something that few people in the entire cyber scam compound could accomplish. Unless Wu Minden's brain had been squeezed numb by his sphincter, he would definitely try to bring me to his 10th cyber scam group. That was exactly why I had worked my ass off in the past week. If that scum wanted me to join his new cyber scam group, he'd have to give me some incentives. Hee, Deputy Leader Wu sure has an eye for talent. Your idea is excellent. I completely agree. However, 086 has only been in the compound for a short time, and he needs some time to adapt. I think we should let him also be a trainer in our 9th group. It's not a conflict for an S-level star salesman to also be a group trainer. Abu raised an eyebrow at Wu Minden's words and immediately agreed to his suggestion, but in 2 sentences, he had blocked all of Wu Minden's moves. 086, you've made such great revenue this week. You deserve a reward. If you're willing, I'll personally apply to the big boss to shed your pig status and have you become a sales trainer in my group. I'll also have you be a permanent S-level star salesman, and all of your benefits will be at the highest standards. Before Wu Minden could speak again, Abu had already smilingly offered me an olive branch in front of everyone. Shed my pig status? A sales trainer within the group? A permanent S-level star salesman? I never thought that everything I had once longed for was now within my reach. The surprise was just too sudden. I subconsciously wanted to nod in agreement, but before I could even open my mouth, I saw Wu Minden standing between me and that scum Abu with a grim face. Crap. I almost forgot about this scum. After coming back to my senses, I broke out into a cold sweat. I knew Wu Mindan's thoughts better than anyone. If I had given in to the temptation and agreed to Abu, I would have completely offended him. Knowing the kind of person that scum was, even if I shed my pig status and became a trainer, I would be in for endless trouble. Should I stay in the 9th cyberscam group or follow Wu Mindan to the soon-to-be established 10th cyberscam group? I couldn't afford to offend Wu Mindan, but could I afford to offend that scum Abu? I was just one step away from success, but I had not expected to encounter such a sudden change of events. One was a deputy leader who was currently on a roll, and the other was a devil in a beast's skin. Caught between them, I could die without even knowing why. Should I choose Wu Mindan or Abu? This was another life-or-death decision. My true preference was, of course, to follow Wu Mindan to the new cyberscam group. If the new cyberscam group was to get off to a good start, and given my recent performance, there was no way that scum Wu Mindan would not rely on me in the future. That would offer a greater degree of safety for me. Most importantly, for the new cyberscam group to operate completely, they'd need a matching office, dorms, and a dining hall. That was what I was truly interested in. If the 10th cyberscam group was going to have their own dining hall, they would need to equip it with a chef and a logistics team, and that was my opportunity. But these thoughts had to be hidden deep within my heart. I couldn't show even a hint of it. In reality, I didn't have a choice. With Wu Mindan's cunning and Abu's shrewdness, it was impossible that they'd be stupid enough to give a pig the right to choose. Even if that pig had just broken the single-week revenue record since the cyber scam compound had been established. Now it was just a matter of seeing if Wu Mindan's arm could twist the bigger guy's leg. But no matter what, at least I'd be able to shed my pig status this time around. As for whether the scum who lost out in the power struggle would try to make my life hell, I couldn't think that far ahead. All I could do was take it one step at a time. After all, surviving and escaping the cyber scam compound was not going to be easy. I was already very lucky to have made it this far. Chapter 75. The Face-Off, Choosing Wu Mindan. As the old saying goes, alcohol gives courage to the timid. But more than alcohol, easily accessible power and wealth can embolden people. Besides, that scum Wu Mindan wasn't particularly timid to begin with. Now that he was certain to be the leader of the soon-to-be-established 10th cyber scam group, he was much less afraid of Abu. To compete for me, this top salesman who had generated over 10 million in sales this week, that scum even had the nerve to argue with Abu openly in the hallway outside the office. Perhaps because of his background, that scum Wu Mindan's pursuit of power was almost pathological. I had already realized that becoming a group leader wasn't his final goal, but rather, just the beginning. Though I didn't know if that scum had an extreme desire for power or if he wanted to prove something to someone, I knew that he would do anything and use any means necessary to climb higher. That was one of the main reasons I was willing to work with him. Any means necessary, in a way, also meant breaking conventions and being audacious. For example, recommending me, a pig who had only been in the compound for less than a month, to be a cyber scam sales trainer. I silently backed away, listening to these two scumbags argue. I didn't dare say a word, and even made my breathing a little lighter than usual. All I could do was secretly root for Wu Mindan in my heart. Their argument grew increasingly heated, and was on the verge of turning into an all-out feud. Even Abu, with his considerable composure, was starting to show his anger. Wu Mindan, before things are officially finalized, I advise you to keep yourself in check, otherwise you might end up with nothing. Abu's trademark neighborly smile was back, but his voice was as cold as ice. That scum Wu Mindan had obviously reached the end of his rope and responded with a fake smile. You don't need to worry about me, leader. I'm not one of those forgotten ghosts. The Wu family in this compound isn't someone to be trifled with. 086 was someone I brought up. It's only right that he follows me to the new cyber scam group. I'm not afraid to bring this issue up to the big boss. Leader Abu, thank you for your care over the past year or so. You will be rewarded greatly in the future. Wu Mindan emphasized those words, rewarded greatly, and even I, as a bystander, could hear the deep resentment in his tone. Could it be that those two scumbags had some kind of beef between them? I quietly noted this and planned to find an opportunity to subtly ask about it. It might come in handy. And in those few words, Wu Mindan unintentionally revealed some very important information to me. He had connections in the cyber scam compound. The way he said it, it seemed like he was someone of considerable influence. Or, the Wu family he was talking about were the masterminds of the cyber scam compound. A large cyber scam compound like this would be difficult to control if it were managed by just one person. And the different factions were very complicated. I had always suspected that the so-called mastermind was more than just one individual. The big boss that Abu referred to was probably similar to the chairman of a corporation, the person with the biggest stake. In addition to this big boss, there were probably several, maybe even dozens, of other large and small shareholders who were also considered to be bosses. The Wu family that Wu Minden had mentioned was likely to be some kind of faction within the compound. 086, your sales this week have already exceeded 10 million. What's the point in doing any more phone calls? Let's go eat. Just as I was standing silently behind them, secretly analyzing and speculating, Wu Minden suddenly turned to me and said, 086, you need to think this through. Before I could even speak, Abu's gaze, like a knife, fell on my face. Again? Will this ever end? I instantly felt like cursing. Wu Minden wasn't inviting me to eat at all. He was clearly putting me on the spot. While putting me on the spot, he was also forcing me to take a stand. At this point, whether I chose to go or stay, I would definitely offend one of them. It was no longer just about my value. It was about those two scumbags' pride. What was worse was that those two scumbags had effectively torn off the pretense. They'd made their intentions clear, and there was no room for reconciliation. It had completely eliminated any possibility of me playing both sides. What should I do? Should I follow Wu Minden or stay in Abu's 9th cyber scam group? I only thought about it for 2 or 3 seconds before I made my decision. More accurately, I'd already made up my mind before those two scumbags had started arguing. The only reason I was hesitating was the fear that was deep in my heart when facing that scum Abu. After all, he was the one who had personally pulled out my toenails and cut off one of my toes when I first entered the compound. And that scum far exceeded the average Burmese scum, in both his temperament and methods. For Abu to be the leader of a cyber scam group at such a young age, no one would be stupid enough to believe that he had no backing. Even if he hadn't pledged allegiance to anyone, when he became the leader, he would have aligned with some faction in the compound. From Abu's words about personally applying to the big boss for your release, this scumbag was very likely a close confidant of that mysterious big boss. Otherwise, as a middle manager in the compound, how would he have the ability to reach the ear of someone so powerful? I didn't know who else was part of the higher-ups of the compound, but I knew that Scum Abu had a direct superior in the compound. Of course, I hadn't even met any of the 3 top managers of the compound yet. If I wanted to stay in the compound and work my way up the ladder, then it would be safer to stay with Abu. But I wanted to escape this hellhole alive. Following Wu Minden was undoubtedly the better option. Originally, there was another important reason for my hesitation, but after Wu Minden revealed his connections, that reason no longer existed. All of these thoughts and considerations might seem like a lot and very complicated, but they only took place in just a few seconds. Leader Abu, thank you for your care and guidance during this time. I'm sorry. Ignoring that scum Abu's knife-like gaze, I stepped forward and bowed respectfully to him. Then, without hesitation, I stood behind Wu Minden. Fine. I thought that scum Abu was going to go crazy and lash out at me in front of everyone, but he just smiled, nodded, and simply said, fine, then turned and left. I would have preferred that scum to give me a few hard slaps, or order someone to beat me half to death. Even if he'd cut off a finger or two, I would have felt much more at ease. The more that scum acted like he was easygoing and unbothered, the more uneasy I became. If someone had betrayed me and made me lose face in public, there was no way that I would let it go like that. Even if I didn't kill them, I'd make them suffer. Chapter 76. Old enemies meet, eyes full of hate. Don't worry. This afternoon, I will get you released from pig status and confirm your position as a sales trainer. As long as you have my protection, even Abu won't dare to mess with you easily. Sensing my worry and fear, Wu Minden immediately smiled and patted my shoulder, offering me some reassurance. Thank you, leader. I won't say anything unnecessary. From now on, just watch my actions. I was full of worry, but I still had to put on a sincere and touched expression and make a strong promise. Ha ha ha, let's go eat. I'll take you to the VIP restaurant for lunch that only deputy leaders and higher ranks have the right to eat in. Today I had given Wu Minden plenty of face, and that scum was grinning from ear to ear. While he was in a good mood, I quickly took the opportunity to mention bringing Wang Lingling with us. That scum just teased me about it a couple of times, and then agreed without a second thought. I secretly sighed in relief when that scum agreed. Other than Yushio, Wang Lingling was now the only person in the compound whom I could somewhat trust. Since I was leaving the ninth cyber scam group, of course I couldn't leave her behind. My reason for doing so was not just that Wang Lingling could help me, but also because it would serve as a shield and provide a weakness for that scum Wu Minden. Someone with an appetite for women and had a burden was, of course, much easier to control. In less than half an hour, the news of my massive deal had spread to all the cyber scam groups. When Wu Minden brought me to the office next door to get Wang Lingling, Ahua, the head of the third group, didn't even dare to fart and brought her out obediently with a smile on his face. Even a fool could see now that, if nothing unexpected happened, Wu Minden's promotion to leader of the soon-to-be established 10th cyber scam group was a done deal. That scum Ahua would have to have the brain of a donkey to go against Wu Minden at this critical point. Brother Chong, what's going on? Wang Lingling followed cautiously behind me, lowered her voice, and asked with her eyes shining. It's too much to explain in 1 or 2 sentences. We'll talk slowly when we get back to the room tonight. I gestured for her to be quiet and nodded towards Wu Minden, who was in front of us. Wang Lingling immediately nodded in understanding and stopped speaking. I knew that she must have a lot of questions right now, but this wasn't the time to talk. With Wu Minden and the other Burmese scum around, it wasn't convenient to say certain things. It had to be said that the treatment that Burmese scum at the deputy leader level and above received in the cyber scam compound was so much better than the pigs. Not only did they have their own dining hall, but the variety of food was such that my once satisfactory A-level salesman meals could only be considered slightly better than pig slop. There was chicken, duck, fish, and meat, and even seafood like lobsters and abalone. I roughly counted and found that there were almost 30 different kinds of food, including meat, vegetables, and desserts. There were over a dozen different kinds of drinks. White wine, beer, red wine, and various fruit juice drinks were all readily available in this exquisitely decorated small restaurant. Take whatever you want to eat and drink. The chef here is very good. His skills are not inferior to the chefs of some 5-star hotels. Wu Minden handed me and Wang Lingling a plate each while smiling and explaining. Do you have this many dishes every day? I casually picked up a lobster and asked curiously. It's never less than this, and we change it up every few days. You know, we're stuck in the compound every day, and even if we have money, we can't spend it. From a certain point of view, it's no different than being in prison. So, the compound higher-ups try their best to compensate us in terms of food, clothing, and other necessities. Perhaps in Wu Minden's heart, he no longer thought of me as just a pig, so he didn't have as many reservations when he spoke. Once you officially become a sales trainer, you can come here to eat every day too. By then, you'll find that even the most delicious food will taste just average after eating it for a few months. I'd rather be eating street food from an outdoor night market now. Wu Minden picked up a piece of freshly grilled steak, glanced at it with disgust, and then tossed it back. At that moment, I didn't know what to say. Thinking back to the food when I first entered the compound, and looking at all this delicious food, my heart was full of mixed emotions. The polarization in this hellish cyber scam compound was just too extreme. It was a world of difference, to say the least. Especially when comparing the two, the difference between the levels was amplified. For example, in the eyes of the lowest level D-level salesman, an A-level salesman was practically living in heaven. To eat a piece of meat, the men were even willing to get on their knees like a dog, and the women would open their legs without hesitation. And we so-called higher-level salesmen, compared to Wu Minden and the others, were no different, were we? The difference was actually greater. Leader, other than enjoying all this delicious food every day, does the compound give you any other benefits? From that scum Wu Minden's words, it seemed that once I became a cyber scam sales trainer, I could also enjoy the benefits of a deputy leader. If that was the case, that would be great. It would be very beneficial for the future to know what kind of benefits a deputy leader enjoyed. I just didn't know if I would be allowed to carry a gun, given that I was a Chinese. If I could carry a gun like Wu Minden and the others, it would undoubtedly increase my chances of escaping the cyber scam compound alive. Guns, at the critical moments, could not only kill, but most importantly, save lives. Of course, women, commissions, all those things will be available. You will find out the details once you officially become a sales trainer. Wu Minden smiled, picked up a few of his favorite dishes, and then led me and Wang Lingling to a window seat. Since that scum didn't go into detail, I couldn't ask too many questions. While eating, I chatted with him about random things. At the same time, I was subtly observing the details of the entire restaurant, including how many tables and chairs there were, how many waiters there were, how many exits there were, and where the light switches were. I tried my best to memorize everything I saw, just in case I needed it. Me, Wu Minden, and Wang Lingling were the first group of people to come to the restaurant for lunch. Not long after, other Burmese scum started to come in. Everyone who saw me and Wang Lingling would look at us with curiosity, and some would quietly ask what was going on with the other scum. As more people came in, I and Wang Lingling attracted more and more attention. Undoubtedly, many people were trying to guess who these two unfamiliar faces were. I carefully observed and found that most of the people who came to this restaurant were Burmese scum. There were only a few people who seemed to be Chinese. What I didn't expect was that I would see a familiar face that I had been dreaming of killing. That person was the personnel manager, Zhang Fengfeng, who had tricked me into coming to Myanmar and Bana. When I saw Zhang Fengfeng, that woman was also looking in my direction. Perhaps she had already forgotten about me, but the moment I saw her, my eyes immediately turned red. Chapter 77. Something's wrong. Is the leader appointed tomorrow not really a leader? If there was anyone in this world I wanted to kill the most, it would definitely be Zhang Fengfeng. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have been tricked into the cyber scam compound, ending up in this situation. Brother Chong, what's wrong? Wang Lingling, who was sitting next to me, immediately sensed something was off and gently tugged at my sleeve under the table. Following my gaze, she also noticed the Chinese faces sitting at the table not far away. It's nothing, just happened to see an old acquaintance. I quickly shifted my gaze back to my plate, suppressing the urge to rush over and stab Zhang Fengfeng to death. Wang Lingling only took a subtle, deep look at Zhang Fengfeng before burying her head in her food again without saying a word. What I didn't know was that it was this very look that would eventually cause Zhang Fengfeng to die at Wang Lingling's hands. Of course, that was all in the future. Wu Minden, now the most popular deputy leader, was sitting at the table with me and Wang Lingling, two unfamiliar faces. Just halfway through the meal, two Burmese scum took the initiative to approach our table, plates in hand. Leader Wu, congratulations. You have to treat us all this time. That's right. So many of us were competing for the position of leader of the soon-to-be established 10th cyber scam group, and it turns out that old Wu beat us to it. The two Burmese scum who had taken the initiative to come over seemed to have a decent relationship with Wu Minden, and they spoke casually. Not at all, I just got lucky. Wu Minden smiled humbly and casually invited the two to sit next to him. You sure are lucky this time. It's outrageous. You have a pig working under you who broke the compound's single-week revenue record for so many years. That one pig alone generated over 10 million for you. How can anyone else compete with that? If I'm not mistaken, you're 086, the one who made that 7 million plus deal today, right? After the two men made some envious and jealous jokes, they suddenly changed the topic to me. Faced with the question from the Burmese scum with the missing front tooth who was sitting across from me, I subconsciously looked at Wu Minden, silently asking if I should acknowledge it. That's right. He's 086, my number one confidant. That scum Wu Minden emphasized the words, number one confidant, showing a strong sense of protectiveness and caution. Old Wu, don't look at us like we're thieves. Even if we were going to steal someone, we wouldn't steal a friend's man. That's right. The two Burmese scum spoke in unison, their eyes constantly scanning over me. Friends? Huh. In a hellhole like this cyber scam compound, who was really a friend to anyone? I sneered inwardly and immediately became wary of the two scumbags. Although I didn't know what their real motives were, I was sure that these two were coming for me. After these two Burmese scum took the lead, another 7 or 8 Burmese scum came over to greet and chat, using the pretext of congratulating Wu Minden. Perhaps it was because of my preconceived notions, but I felt that almost every Burmese scum who came over had ill intentions. At first, when people came up to flatter and butter him up, Wu Minden was very proud and smug. But after a few minutes, he realized that the people who approached him were all turning the conversation to me after only a few sentences. Realizing this, that scum Wu Minden's face immediately turned dark. He didn't even bother to finish his food. After quickly giving a few perfunctory replies, he quickly left the restaurant with me and Wang Lingling. Leader, I feel like something's not right. As soon as we came out of the restaurant, I offered him a cigarette and gave him a worried reminder. What's not right? Wu Minden frowned, cigarette in mouth, and asked as we walked quickly toward the office. I can't put my finger on it, but I just feel like something's not right. Logically speaking, the new group will officially be established tomorrow, at which time you will officially become the leader of the 10th group. The difference between a leader and a deputy leader may seem small, but there is a world of difference between the two positions. But I didn't see any sign of respect or fear for you in the eyes of most people in the restaurant. At first I hadn't noticed this problem, but the more I thought about it, the more something seemed off. Even though Wu Minden hadn't officially taken office, it was a done deal that he'd be the leader of the soon-to-be-established 10th cyberscam group. I clearly remembered what Wu Minden and the other 3 deputy leaders of the 9th cyberscam group were like in front of Abu. It was no exaggeration to say that as soon as that scum Abu glared at them, Wu Minden and the other deputy leaders would be so scared they wouldn't dare to fart. But who in the restaurant at noon today had been afraid of Wu Minden? Was the leader who would be taking office tomorrow not going to be a real leader? Would those Burmese scum really not know the consequences of trying to dig a leader's man out from under him? After my reminder, Wu Minden's face changed dramatically, and he finally realized the problem. Could something have gone wrong? Impossible. There is only one afternoon left before the end of the assessment. Without cheating, there is absolutely no way a group will surpass me. That scum Wu Minden's expression kept changing, and his brows were knitted together in a frown. I was also confused about what had gone wrong. In terms of revenue alone, our group was at least 5 million ahead of the second-place group. Unless they could also make a mind-blowing deal of more than 5 million in the last afternoon, there was absolutely no way they could overtake us. Hearing Wu Minden mention revenue, I immediately reminded him, "Leader, do you think someone could have cheated with the sales numbers?" Cheated with the sales numbers? Wu Minden paused for a moment, then immediately shook his head. That's virtually impossible. The compound is very strict with controlling the accounts. No one can manipulate them. The only way to cheat is to use their own money to generate revenue. The second-place group needs at least 5 million in sales to catch up to us, let alone the other groups. Who would be willing to spend so much money? Under normal circumstances, a deputy leader's annual income is between 1 and 2 million. How many of the 30-plus deputy leaders could take out so much money at once? Deputy leaders only made 1 or 2 million a year. That was a bit unexpected. I had originally thought that deputy leaders like Wu Minden made at least 3 or 4 million a year. Based on those numbers, it would be reasonable to assume that the deputy leader's commission was about 3%. It wouldn't be more than 5% at most. I wondered how much of a commission the leaders got. Although Wu Minden and those Burmese scum spent most of the year in the compound, it didn't mean that they were able to save their money. The most popular forms of entertainment in the cyberscam compound were gambling and drugs. Many Burmese scum not only failed to save money, but also ended up with huge debts. A few days ago, I'd accidentally overheard Wu Minden mention that there was a small internal casino in the compound. As for who owned the casino, I was not sure yet. Chapter 78. Only 3 dead ends left. Since Wu Minden was so sure that there was no cheating with sales numbers, then the attitude of the other Burmese scum of deputy leader level in the restaurant was worth noting. 1 or 2 was understandable, but when so many people showed a lack of respect for Wu Minden, it could only mean that they all knew something. In other words, those Burmese scum had a secret among themselves. And this secret was something that Wu Minden was not aware of. Leader, since it's impossible to cheat with the sales numbers, there's only one other possibility. After thinking carefully for a moment, I had a rough idea in my mind. If that was the case, it was uncertain whether Wu Minden would be able to become the leader of the soon-to-be-established 10th cyberscam group. Wu Minden immediately asked anxiously, "What is it?" The compound higher-ups changed their minds and revoked the 10th group. Other than that possibility, I couldn't think of any other change. Since it was a done deal that scum Wu Minden would become the leader of the soon-to-be-established 10th cyberscam group, the focus was on the soon-to-be-established part. In other words, as of right now, the so-called 10th cyberscam group had not yet been officially established. If the higher-ups of the cyberscam compound changed their minds and canceled the 10th group, Wu Minden's leadership position would naturally disappear. After I told Wu Minden all of my speculations, that scum's face immediately turned extremely ugly, and his fists were clenched so tight that his knuckles cracked. That's not possible. The formation of the 10th cyberscam group is something that the higher-ups have already decided upon. If they cancel the 10th group at the last minute, what would they do with the new pigs? They can't possibly take them all and harvest their organs. After thinking about it for a second, Wu Minden said with some wishful thinking, "I certainly believe that the compound higher-ups had originally intended to establish the 10th cyberscam group to expand their cyberscam business and make more money. But that scum Wu Minden had clearly overlooked one thing. In this week's competition for leader, the compound's existing 36 groups had almost exhausted all their means and had spared no effort. To boost sales, at least 80 to 100 pigs had been forced to death or had been driven crazy. The number of people with severed fingers and sliced ears was countless. There were also quite a few who had been beaten and had lost a hand or a foot, and the water prisons were already overcrowded. I estimated that the total number of pigs who were forced to death, driven crazy, or seriously injured over the past week was not less than 200. If someone used that as a reason to suggest to the higher-ups that they should break up the new batch of pigs and allocate them to different groups, it wasn't impossible. Leader, judging from the reactions of those people in the restaurant, it seems like someone may have already informed them in advance and coordinated things. And we have completely offended Leader Abu this time. With his temper, he certainly won't make it easy for you to become a leader. Just in case, I suggest that you should try to secure the leadership position as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the duck that's already in your mouth will just fly away. We talked as we walked. Once we returned to Wu Mindan's office, after my analysis, that scum finally understood the seriousness of the situation. He couldn't sit still anymore and was extremely anxious. You make sense, Chong. I'm going to go find someone to figure out what's going on right now. After saying that, Wu Mindan quickly hurried out of the office. Brother Chong, is it possible that all of our hard work for the past week is just going to end up being for nothing? After looking at Wu Mindan's quickly disappearing figure, Wang Lingling got up to close the door, looking very anxious. This situation has developed to the point where it is completely beyond our control. Now it just depends on how strong the connections that scum Wu Mindan has really are. I slumped onto the sofa, rubbing my temples and sighing weakly, feeling exhausted. The psychological pressure of the past week was unimaginable to ordinary people. I had finally pushed things to this point, but I never expected to encounter this sudden change in events at the most crucial moment. If that scum Wu Mindan failed to become a leader this time, my good days with Wang Lingling would come to an end. Not only would it be difficult to find a chance to escape this hellhole alive, but I would probably not even be able to protect my own life. Leaving aside other issues, I wouldn't even be able to get past Abu. Even if my sales abilities were impressive, from what I knew about that scum Abu, he would definitely not let me go easily. Even if I didn't die, I would be made to suffer terribly. Getting a few toes cut off again would be considered light. What if, and I mean what if, Wu Mindan fails to achieve his dream of becoming a leader? What do we do? Wang Lingling lit a cigarette, handed it to me, and asked again as she sat next to me, holding the cigarette between her thumb and forefinger. Hearing Wang Lingling's words, I simply rotated the cigarette in my hand and remained silent. During the past few nights, lying in bed, I had wondered what I would do if Wu Mindan didn't become the leader. However, things had been changing too quickly. I hadn't expected to be forced to choose between Wu Mindan and Abu at noon that day. After completely offending Abu, the contingency plans I had considered before were basically all useless. The only two people in the cyber scam compound who were both Burmese scum and had real power were Wu Mindan and Abu. If I lost one of them and offended the other completely, that meant that only 3 paths were left for Wang Lingling and me. And those 3 paths were basically dead ends. The first path was to kneel in front of Abu like a dog, begging for his forgiveness. After having my hands and feet broken, or being tortured half to death, I would become a dog under his command. The second path was to try to escape forcefully, like what Hui had mentioned before. As for the last path, strictly speaking, it didn't even count as a path, because I wasn't even sure if that path existed. The cyber scam compound was both large and small. After completely offending that scum Abu, the leader of the powerful 9th cyber scam group, he had countless ways to kill me and Wang Lingling. But after all, he was just the leader of the cyber scam business sector. He had no authority over the adult entertainment sector. The third path that I had thought of was that, once it was confirmed that Wu Mindan's leadership position had disappeared, I would find a way to bring Wang Lingling over to the adult entertainment sector. That was the only escape route that I could think of. However, it was past the monthly selection period for the adult entertainment sector. It wouldn't be easy to get that legendary Sister Fei, one of the 3 managers of the compound, to accept me and Wang Lingling. If it really came to that, this matter would have to depend on Wu Mindan's help. Let's not think too much about it for now. Let's get some rest and wait and see. I believe we will get results soon. I didn't tell Wang Lingling about my plans. Everything was still just our speculation. The issue had not yet been officially finalized. And I believe that Wu Mindan was probably 10 or 100 times more anxious than I was. Having finally made it this far, that scum could never watch the duck in his mouth just fly away. If I were him, I would risk everything to get that leadership position this time. Chapter 79. The last bit of warmth in the hellhole. We'll die together. We'll escape together. The wait was just agonizing. That scum Wu Mindan had been out the whole afternoon. At first, I was able to force myself to stay calm, sitting on the sofa and closing my eyes to rest. But as each minute ticked by, I gradually couldn't sit still anymore. Wang Lingling was even more anxious, pacing back and forth in Wu Mindan's office restlessly since around 3 p.m. In just 2 or 3 hours, her lips had a row of blisters. But no matter how torturous and anxious we were, there was nothing I and Wang Lingling could do. We didn't even dare to step out of the office. Even going to the bathroom, we had to hold it in. Before anything had been officially decided, if me and Wang Lingling just stepped out the door, Abu's people could drag us off, cut off our limbs, and throw us into the water prison. Then we'd have no one to cry to. So what if I just closed a 7 million plus deal? So what if I broke the cyber scam compound's single-week revenue record? As long as I hadn't been freed from my pig status, I was still a low-level pig. That scum Abu might not dare to do anything to Wu Mindan, but killing 1 or 2 pigs was an easy task for him. Would the higher-ups of the compound punish him for killing me? Don't be ridiculous. Wu Mindan didn't return at 3 p.m. That scum was still nowhere to be seen at 4 p.m. By 5 p.m., a few blisters had appeared on my lips as well. More than half a pack of cigarettes that I had taken out with me in the morning had been smoked, and there was only one left. Even after it was 6 p.m. and time to get off work, that scum Wu Mindan still hadn't appeared. Even with my current mental fortitude, I was close to breaking down. Brother Chong, something must have happened to Wu Mindan. What should we do? Please, think of something. The 6 o'clock bell was like the final straw that broke Wang Lingling's composure, and she completely fell apart. Phew. Don't panic. Let's wait 10 more minutes. If that scum isn't back by then, I'll go see Abu. You go back to your room first. After a moment of hesitation, I let out a long sigh. I took the switchblade that I carried with me and handed it to her. If I don't come back tonight and someone breaks in, you'll have to deal with it yourself. Things were turning out much worse than I had expected. If things had gone smoothly for Wu Mindan, he wouldn't have needed this much time. That scum's delay could only mean that he had encountered a major problem. If that scum didn't come back, my 3 final escape routes would be reduced to 2. Without Wu Mindan's help, Wang Lingling and I would not be able to leave the 9th cyber scam group, let alone switch over to the adult entertainment business under Li Fei. Forceful escape was a 1 in 10,000 gamble. It was only possible if I had extremely good luck. I was never one to trust in luck. I certainly didn't believe I could win with that 0.01% chance. So, in my opinion, I only had one path left. That was to take the initiative to go to that scum Abu, kowtow, and beg for his forgiveness like a dog. If that scum Abu didn't go too far, and like the last time, only cut off a few toes, or cut off a few fingers, or even cut off my ears or an arm, I would just grit my teeth and bear it. But if that scum was determined to kill me, thinking of that, I touched the 3-inch iron nail I had hidden next to my body and hardened my heart. Trying to escape with all my limbs was already as hard as ascending to the heavens, let alone trying to escape if I were severely injured and crippled. If that scum completely shut off my last chance of escape, I would have no choice but to try to take him down with me. Even if I couldn't kill him, I would have to leave him with a lifelong, unforgettable memory. Perhaps sensing my desire for death, Wang Lingling clutched the switchblade in her hand, threw herself into my arms, and sobbed, "Brother Chong, didn't you promise to bring me out of this hellhole alive? We'll die together if we must, and we'll escape together if we can. Take me with you to see that scum Abu. I don't want to be separated from you." Wang Lingling's voice was light and gentle, but it was full of unquestionable determination. Her hot tears fell onto my neck, causing the heart that had long been frozen solid to crack open. At that moment, I felt a warmth emanating from her. The feeling of someone wanting to die with me was actually not so bad. My tense body gradually relaxed. I gently put my arms around Wang Lingling's waist and rubbed my chin against her hair that smelled faintly of soap. This won't have much of an effect on you. When the time comes, just blame everything on me. You're so smart, you should know what to say. No matter what, you are an A-level salesman now. That scum Abu won't kill you so easily. After whispering a few instructions in Wang Lingling's ear, I let go of her waist, gripped her shoulders tightly, looked into her eyes seriously, and smiled. "Live well. If you get the chance, you must find a way to escape this man-eating hell. When you get back to China, visit my parents for me. Tell them to take care of themselves and not to be sad about me." As I spoke, my tears began to fall uncontrollably. Since I had been tricked into the compound, I had thought many times that I would die here, and I had even thought of many different ways to die. I wasn't actually afraid of the torture and death that was about to come. I was only a little regretful that I wouldn't be able to see my parents one last time while I was still alive. "I'm not going," They're your parents. If you want to say something, you should go back and say it to them yourself. Wang Lingling bit her lip, shook her head forcefully, and her tears fell everywhere, shattering on the desk, on the sofa, on the floor, like our broken dreams of escaping the compound alive. Brother Chong, please, take me with you to see that scum Abu. I'm still valuable. If that scum doesn't like my sales performance, I still have my body. I can let him take advantage of me, let him abuse me. I can even let him treat me like a dog and do whatever he wants, as long as that scum promises to let you go. Slap. Wang Lingling wanted to continue, but I slapped her hard and knocked her words away. I knew she was somewhat right, but for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to be selfish at this moment. This time, it was basically impossible for me to escape. There was no need to drag her down with me. Don't say anything else. In the future, you must use all your strength to live well. I gently stroked Wang Lingling's face, which now had 5 red imprints from my slap, then took out the last wrinkled cigarette from my pack and lit it. I took a puff, and then handed it to her. Wang Lingling lowered her head, took a puff of the cigarette, and then handed it back. The smoke made it impossible for me to keep my eyes open for a moment. I didn't notice the stubbornness and determination that flashed across her eyes. Chapter 80. Wu Minden is back, finally achieving his goal. Remember my words. Live well. After finishing the last cigarette, I stubbed out the burning end in the ashtray, looked into Wang Lingling's eyes, and dropped that last sentence. Then I turned and walked away without any hesitation. Brother Chong? Wang Lingling's voice, full of tears, trembled as she called out from behind me. She subconsciously tried to follow, but I glared at her as I turned sharply. She bit her lip hard until it bled. Her shoulders were trembling slightly, and the knuckles of the hand gripping the switchblade had turned white. Live. I forced back the pain in my heart, gave her a bright smile one last time, reached out and opened the door to the office and left. It was enough for just me to die. Wang Lingling had actually had a harder time than I did to get to where she was. I sincerely hoped that she could escape this hell on earth alive. If I could live, no one would want to die. But knowing that I had reached a dead end, I thought it was better to let her live on with the hope that I was leaving behind. If one day Wang Lingling could escape from the compound alive, maybe she could visit my parents for me. Just when I had made the worst possible decision, left Wu Minden's office, and was about to go find that scum Abu, I saw Wu Minden coming up the stairs from below at the corner of the stairwell. We were both surprised to see each other so suddenly in the stairwell. After a moment of shock, that scum Wu Minden casually asked, Chong, where are you going? To the dining hall for food? Wu Minden. That scum was finally back. Seeing him, I felt like I had been rescued from the jaws of death. Leader, you're finally back. We were so worried. At that moment, I really wanted to rush up and give him a big hug, but I managed to hold myself back at the last minute. From the relaxed expression on his face, I could tell that things had taken a turn for the better. Wang Lingling heard the commotion and also ran out of the office. When she saw Wu Minden, she both cried and laughed, leaving that scum completely confused. However, at this time, he had no time to pay attention to Wang Lingling. Damn it, you were right. If it weren't for your reminder, I probably would have lost the duck that was already in my mouth. Hearing me bring this up, a deep sense of fear flashed through Wu Minden's eyes. Does that mean that you've resolved everything, leader? Hearing that, I felt an overwhelming joy, and I quickly asked to confirm, my voice trembling. Phew. Luckily, I put aside my pride and begged the Wu family. Although I paid a heavy price, I finally managed to get the leadership position in my hands. Wu Minden felt both pain and lingering fear. Changing the topic, he continued with gritted teeth. That bastard Abu. If I ever catch him, I swear I'll kill him. What were you planning to do earlier? I was silent for 2 seconds, and then squeezed out those 3 words, my face looking grim. Find Abu. Wu Minden's face changed immediately, and his gaze was like a knife. After taking out the iron nail that I had hidden next to my body, I said with a fierce and half-genuine expression, after waiting all afternoon without seeing you return, I guess that it must be that scum Abu who was interfering from behind the scenes. Now everyone in the compound knows I'm your confidant. If you don't become the leader this time, I certainly wouldn't have a good time. I thought, since that was the case, I might as well just try to fight with that scum Abu. If it came down to it, we could all die. Even if I couldn't kill him, even if I had to give up my life, I wanted to avenge you, leader. Strictly speaking, I wasn't lying. If I really fought to the death with that scum Abu, It would indeed help Wu Minden vent his anger. But what I didn't say was that before fighting to the death, I would first admit defeat to Abu. If he were to spare me, I would still try my best to survive. Chong, I knew I hadn't misjudged you. That scum Abu. I'll take my time to deal with him. Now, the most important thing is to get our 10th group up and running. Wu Minden played with the iron nail I had handed over. There was even a hint of emotion on his face. He obviously didn't expect a pig to go this far for him. Of course, how much of that emotion was genuine and how much was fake, only he knew. Has the matter of the 10th group been officially decided? Hearing him say this, my heart skipped a beat and even my breathing quickened. Of course it has. Not long ago, I was officially appointed as the leader of the 10th phone and internet sales group. And from this moment on, you are no longer a pig, but a sales trainer for the 10th group. Wu Minden couldn't hold back his triumphant laughter any longer. After speaking, he tossed a large bag to me. Sales trainer for the 10th group? I almost cried with joy as I caught the bag. Wang Lingling was also extremely excited. After countless brushes with death and so much hard work, I had finally achieved my goal. It was just too damn hard. Leader, is this for me? Sniffling, I opened the bag and took out the dark green uniform that was the same as the one Wu Minden was wearing. I asked a little uncertainly. The sales trainer within the group has the same rank as a deputy leader. Of course, you can no longer continue wearing pig clothes. Logically speaking, you haven't been in the compound for very long, and being Chinese, you shouldn't be allowed to carry a gun. But given your great contributions to the compound and your special circumstances, I specifically went out of my way to ask for some favors to get you one. From now on, even that bastard Abu can't mess with you easily. If anyone dares to play any tricks, just kill them, and I'll take responsibility. As he spoke, Wu Minden took a pistol wrapped in a holster from another bag in his hand and gave it to me. The surprise was just too sudden. I never dreamt that scum Wu Minden would actually give me a gun. This was the first time in my life that I had touched one of these things. My hand was shaking when I took the gun from him. If shedding my pig status and becoming a sales trainer for the 10th cyber scam group had given me a 20% chance of escaping the compound alive, then having a gun would undoubtedly increase my chance of surviving by another 10%. At least, from this moment on, I was no longer a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Even if other uncontrollable extreme circumstances arose, I would at least be able to put up some resistance. If all else failed, I could use this gun to take a few scumbags down with me, or kill myself, and avoid the torment of being skinned and having my tendons torn out. Let's go back to the office and change your clothes first. Then, I'll take you to our territory to meet the others in the 10th group. Let's have a good celebration tonight. The pigs from the group will be coming in tomorrow, and we'll be busy. Chong, from now on, I will be completely relying on you for the sales training part of the 10th group. After giving me a brief explanation on how to use the gun, that scum Wu Minden, feeling invigorated and in high spirits, put his arm around my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, leader. I will definitely get our 10th group's revenue up and running in the shortest time possible." I immediately thumped my chest and made a promise. As for whether I could actually achieve that, what did it matter to me? Chapter 81. The formal establishment of Scam Group 10 and promotion to in-house business trainer. Not bad. You look a lot more spirited in this uniform. From this moment on, the time has come for us brothers to make a name for ourselves in the compound. Follow me closely, and when I become a supervisor one day, I'll guarantee you'll become one of the business trainers in the entire compound. After changing clothes, Wu Minding, that scumbag, patted me on the shoulder with high spirits and started drawing another pie in the sky. In fact, I knew better than anyone that getting rid of the piglet status and becoming an in-house business trainer was probably the limit I could reach in this compound. To go even further would be even more difficult than escaping this compound alive. Looking at the entire Dragonflower scam compound, the compound-level business trainers were very few, and they were all Burmese scum without exception. As far as I knew, there had never been a precedent of a Chinese person becoming a compound-level business trainer. Moreover, it wouldn't be easy for Wu Minding to become a supervisor either. Not to mention that Abu and the other 9 scam group leaders were all eyeing the position of head of the scam business department. With a fixed number of positions, the current head of the scam business department was doing a great job, so how could he easily give up his position? Therefore, Wu Minding's words were just something to listen to. Only an idiot would take them seriously. Rather than becoming a compound-level scam business trainer, it would be more realistic to become a supervisor. Of course, that was only if I wanted to stay in the compound for the long run. For me, who wanted to escape the compound every second. The status of an in-house business trainer was no different from becoming a supervisor. Group leader. You've become a person of power in the compound at such a young age. With your ability, it's only a matter of time before you become a supervisor, and even more than that. After pretending to swallow the pie that Wu Minding had drawn, I quickly followed up with a compliment, instantly making him beam with joy and laugh so hard he could barely close his mouth. Ha 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 ha. Let's go take a look at our territory. I don't want to stay in Abu's bastard place for another minute. Wu Minding laughed loudly, and after calling for me and Wang Lingling, he took the lead out of the office with high spirits. Wang Lingling and I carried some of his personal belongings, agreed with him, and then followed him out of Scam Group 9. Scam Group 10's territory was not far from Group 9, and it only took a few minutes to walk there. The same yard and low building. There were over a dozen such places in the entire Scam compound. I wondered what this place was used for before. It definitely couldn't have been a real industrial park. When Wang Lingling and I arrived with Wu Minding, there were already more than 20 Burmese scum waiting in the yard in front of the low building, which belonged to Scam Group 10. As soon as they saw Wu Minding, these Burmese scum immediately stopped chatting and threw away the cigarettes in their hands, standing straight in 2 rows respectfully. Some of these people were temporarily transferred from other groups, and some are people from our Wu family that we've trained in the compound, Wu Minding said quietly as he stepped forward. Understood. I instantly understood, and secretly glanced at these Burmese scum. As expected, I found that the scum in the front row were much more upright in posture and gaze. Although the people in the second row also looked respectful, they were actually slouchy with different gazes and not much respect at all. Wu Minding simply gave a self-introduction to these Burmese scum, introduced my identity, and then started simple personnel appointments and work arrangements. These matters were actually very simple, mainly about assigning which scum to guard the yard, which scum to guard the office, and which scum to guard the dormitory building. Since no piglets had been brought in yet, the entire yard and low building were empty, so there was no work to do at the moment. After the serious matters were arranged, Wu Minding started to buy people's hearts. He first paid out of his own pocket to have a cook who was temporarily transferred from other places prepare a lavish dinner for everyone, and then had people prepare a large amount of good wine and cigarettes. Not only that, he also specially prepared an envelope for everyone. As the person who personally handed out the red envelopes, I could roughly guess from the thickness of the envelopes that there should be at least 5,000 yuan inside. If it was true as Wu Minding had said, that the vice group leader only had 1 or 2 million in commissions per year, then it could be considered quite a generous gesture for him to hand out over 10,000 yuan in one go. This showed how much Wu Minding valued this group leader position. Now that I had officially escaped piglet status and had an official identity, I also had my own fixed room. Since Scam Group 10 was just starting to prepare, my room was temporarily arranged on the top floor. The room specifications were equivalent to those of an S-level ace salesperson. It had a 1-bedroom, 1 living room layout with a private bathroom. The newly changed bedsheets were very clean. The sofa in the living room was very soft and comfortable, and the room was equipped with everyday appliances like a small refrigerator and a washing machine. The only thing missing was a phone. In order to facilitate communication, Abu, that scum, had given me a low-power walkie-talkie. After following Wu Minding around and being busy for quite a while, it wasn't until just before dinner that Wang Lingling and I had some free time to go back to our room and rest alone. The first thing we did after going back to our room and closing the door was throwing ourselves onto the comfortable bed. After greedily lying down for 2 or 3 minutes, I sat up, leaning against the headboard, and took out the gun from the hidden bag on my waist, playing with it. Brother Chong, we're finally one big step closer to escaping this hellhole. You've successfully become an in-house business trainer, and now you have a gun. At least we don't have to worry about being killed by those Burmese scum anymore, Wang Lingling said softly, her face full of joy as she gently touched the gun in my hand. Yes, we've come so far. It hasn't been easy. But Abu, that scum, is not someone to be trifled with. He won't let this matter go so easily since he has suffered such a great loss. We can't relax, but we have to be even more careful than before. To prevent any unforeseen circumstances, it's best to find a chance to escape this hellhole within a month, 2 months at the most. Thinking about Abu, that scumbag, made me unable to feel happy at all. Now I had indeed gotten rid of the piglet status and become a business trainer of Scam Group 10. On the surface, Abu couldn't touch me without a legitimate reason, but secretly, he had many ways to kill me and Wang Lingling. Whether it was experience, background, or ability, Wu Minding was far behind. He was just lucky to become the leader of Scam Group 10. Whether he could hold on to the position was still unknown. From the very beginning, I had no confidence in Wu Minding. Now I only hoped that this scumbag could hold on to his position as group leader for a while longer. Don't let him get removed before Wang Lingling and I escaped. Chapter 82. The Astronomical Price Convenience Store and the Barbershop Without Shampoo. The dinner last night didn't end until almost 11 o'clock. I didn't have much to eat, but I drank a lot of alcohol. When I woke up this morning, my head felt like it was about to explode. Although I almost threw up last night, it was worth it. At the very least, I had become familiar with the Burmese scum of Scam Group 10, and I also had a rough understanding of their personalities. The kitchen staff wouldn't be officially on duty until this morning, so no one would prepare breakfast in the cafeteria. After drinking a glass of warm water prepared by Wang Lingling, I finally felt a little better in my head and stomach. It's still early, you wait in the room first. I'll go to the convenience store and see if there is anything to eat and buy some back. After washing up and telling Wang Lingling a few things, I took a pack of unopened cigarettes and over a dozen 100 yuan bills and went out. The cigarettes and money were of course given to me by Wu Minding. Even the lowest Burmese scum in Scam Group 10 had a red envelope of 5,000 yuan. As Wu Minding's right-hand man and the major contributor to helping him become a group leader, I naturally received a big red envelope too. And my red envelope was thicker than others. Those scums got 5,000, while mine was 10,000. Initially, I thought that there was no way to spend money in the scam compound, but it was only when I was drinking with these scums last night that I unintentionally learned that there were not only small casinos in the compound, but also supermarkets, barbershops, and bathhouses. The huge scam compound was more like a deformed small community. However, only the old piglets who had been in the compound for a long time knew about the supermarkets and barbershops, while those who had just been scammed into the compound had never even heard of them. Supermarkets and barbershops were only open to the Burmese scum and corresponding staff of the compound. If it was before yesterday, not to mention whether I had money or whether I could leave the yard of the scam group, even if I went to the supermarket with money, I would not be able to buy anything. Because these places were not open to piglets at all. Brother Aishi, you're up so early. Brother Pai, your drinking capacity was too good last night. Here, have a cigarette. Brother Ya, there's a large batch of piglets coming in today. You can have some fun again, hee. All the way down from the top floor, I enthusiastically greeted every Burmese scum I met, offered them cigarettes, and was able to call them by their correct names. Although I was Chinese, my current identity was a business trainer of Group 10, enjoying the treatment of a vice group leader, and in a strict sense, my status was higher than theirs. Moreover, I was always smiling, so no Burmese scum openly made things difficult for me. What they thought inside was not important. At least, they were all polite on the surface. Some scums who wanted to please Wu Minding were even more enthusiastic towards me. For example, the old lecher nicknamed Rotten Teeth immediately volunteered to show me the way when he heard that I wanted to go to the convenience store. I was just worried about not knowing how to get to the convenience store, so it was as if someone had sent a pillow when I was sleepy. On the way to the convenience store, I chatted with Rotten Teeth casually, and at the same time, I discreetly inquired about other things in the compound that I didn't know. For example, who owned the convenience store, how the goods were transported in, and whether the barbershop was a proper barbershop or the kind of barbershop without shampoo. Rotten Teeth was a middle-aged man in his 40s. His teeth were black and rotten, whether due to cavities or something he ate. Moreover, this scum was extremely lecherous. He would take advantage of female piglets whenever he had the opportunity. Because he couldn't control the thing in his pants, Rotten Teeth was punished many times, and he had even been close to being kicked out of the compound and becoming someone that even dogs would dislike. This time, with the establishment of Scam Group 10, other Burmese scum were assigned here for various reasons, but Rotten Teeth was the only one who took the initiative to apply to transfer. We arrived at the convenience store after chatting for a few minutes. Just like the convenience stores in the rural towns of China, some daily necessities were placed haphazardly on a few shelves. Accompanied by Rotten Teeth, I walked around casually and found that most of what they sold were things like soap, shampoo, and canned food. And 80% of them were Chinese products. In addition to food and things to use, the rest was various kinds of cigarettes, alcohol, and playing cards. I casually grabbed 2 bags of biscuits and a few bottles of 8 treasure kanji, and also asked a young Burmese woman to give me 2 packs of Yushi cigarettes. These things would only cost at most 100 yuan in China. I never expected that when I checked out, this young Burmese woman would give me a lesson and asked for more than 500 yuan. Even though I had prepared myself in advance that the things in the scam compound might be a little more expensive than outside, I never dreamed that they would be so expensive. After secretly cursing at the profiteers in my heart, I directly took out 600 yuan bills and handed them over, and also said with a smile that there was no need to give me change. Seeing that I was so generous, the young Burmese convenience store owner looked at me seriously and also said something in Burmese while smiling. Brother ya, what did she just say? After coming out of the convenience store, I looked back, and right when I met the gaze of the young Burmese woman, I smiled back at her and asked in a low voice. She said you can just come over whenever you need to buy something. Rotten Teeth took the pack of Yushi cigarettes I handed him, so happy that his molars could be seen. Come on, the stuff here is sold so expensively, I can't afford it. I deliberately complained with a pout, and then pretended to be curious, asking, Brother ya, is she deliberately ripping me off because I'm Chinese? Do you usually pay this price when you come to buy things? It's always been this price, darker than a motherfucker. As soon as he heard me complain about the prices in the convenience store, Rotten Teeth instantly became furious. The convenience store is so black, who can afford to buy things here? How much money do we earn in a year? Who says it isn't? It costs 100 yuan for one visit to the barbershop, 50 yuan for a pack of cigarettes, and a bit more for playing cards. My monthly salary of 10,000 yuan is simply not enough to spend in this compound. It's a good thing I don't do drugs, otherwise I'd have to borrow money from the compound every month to buy drugs, like some idiots. Although 2% interest per month isn't high, it would still be scary if you add it up at the end of the year. Rotten Teeth was already a bit of a chatterbox, and after I had poked his pain points with a few words, I didn't need to keep prompting him, and he just poured out everything I was interested in like a bamboo tube, emptying out beans. One visit to the barbershop costs 100 yuan? It seemed that it was most likely a barbershop without shampoo. Burmese scum borrowed money from the compound with 2% interest per month, which would definitely be considered a very high-interest loan in China. I secretly kept this key information in mind, preparing to go back to the room at night to slowly sort it out and analyze it to see if I could find any clues that could help me escape the compound. Chapter 83. Escaping the Compound. Starting with physical exercise. At a little past 10 in the morning, the newly established scam group 10 finally welcomed its first batch of piglets. This made Wu Minding and the Burmese scum extremely excited. As an in-house performance trainer, the piglets had nothing to do with me when they first entered the group. They would only be sent to my class for training after their value at home had been exhausted and they had been tamed. While Wu Minding personally dealt with these piglets, I said hello to Wu Minding and then went straight into the cafeteria to help. I wasn't helping the cook to cook or cut vegetables, but to deal with some related trivial matters. After all, the group's logistics team was not fully set up yet, so there were things that someone had to deal with. Taking advantage of this opportunity, I finally struck up a conversation with the Burmese scum who were responsible for delivering supplies to various groups. With my deliberate flattery and active efforts to make friends, I became familiar with the leader in no time. However, this scum's Mandarin was too bad. I needed to speak and use gestures at the same time to barely communicate with him. It seems that if I want to escape this hellhole alive, I have to start learning Burmese properly first. I couldn't help but frown and sigh secretly in my heart after sending away those Burmese scum who were delivering supplies. There were indeed some Burmese scum in the compound with a decent level of Mandarin, but these were only a small minority. Most of the scum only knew some simple Mandarin and found it hard to engage in in-depth communication. There were even some Burmese scum who only knew a few simple, everyday Chinese words, making it even more difficult to communicate with them. Unfortunately, the leader who was responsible for delivering supplies to Scam Group 10 only knew a few simple, everyday Chinese words. No matter what, it's a good start. In order to escape the compound alive someday, I must learn Burmese, even if it's like learning bird language. I clenched my teeth, looking at the truck slowly driving out of the Group 10 yard. After the first batch of piglets entered the group, a second and third batch were sent in one after another. It wasn't until 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening that all the unfortunate people who had been scammed over the past week were finally sent to Scam Group 10. With more than 200 piglets, suddenly, Scam Group 10 became lively. The sounds of crying, cursing, and shouting filled my ears every second. In the afternoon, when I passed by the yard, a young woman even spat a gob of phlegm on my face, scolding me as a scumbag and the shame of the country. Of course, I understood why I was being scolded. It was simply because I was Chinese, but I was wearing a uniform equivalent to a vice group leader, and I had a gun on my waist. To that woman who spat at me and cursed loudly, I immediately gave her several hard slaps, and even snatched a stick from a Burmese scum who was grinning nearby, striking her body several times before pretending to angrily leave. Of course, I was very careful in my actions. The slaps to her face sounded crisp and loud, but they would only make her face swollen for a day or two at most. The strikes to her body were also as much as possible on her back and shoulders. It would definitely hurt, but they wouldn't cause any bone injury, let alone internal injuries. Perhaps in that woman's heart, she wanted to tear me, this lackey of the Burmese scum, to pieces. Did it matter what she and those other people who had just arrived in the scam compound thought of me? Not at all. The more they hated me, the more Wu Minding and other Burmese scum would trust me. This was a good thing. After being busy all day, it was almost 10 o'clock at night when I dragged my tired body back to my room. After taking a hot shower, I lay on the sofa for a smoke before feeling a little better. Brother Chong, do you want to eat some canned food or biscuits? Wang Lingling sat next to me, gently massaging my shoulders while asking tenderly. I don't have much of an appetite. I don't want to eat anything. Actually, my body isn't too tired, but my head feels exhausted. I had drunk a lot of alcohol last night, and when I woke up this morning, I already felt like my head was about to explode. And with my brain working at high speed all day, even if I was a computer, the CPU would not be able to handle it if it kept running for so long. Even though I wanted to fall asleep immediately, I still forced myself to light a cigarette and muster up my energy, and went over with Wang Lingling the information that I thought was valuable today. Because of her piglet status, I hadn't let her out all day. A language barrier is indeed a big problem. Brother Chong, you're right. We have to learn Burmese as soon as possible. Wang Lingling nodded in agreement after listening to my explanation and analysis. Okay, starting tomorrow, we will have to take out some time every day to learn Burmese. Not only will I learn, but you have to learn as well, but you can only learn secretly when you return to the room. I'm an in-house business trainer, and if I take the initiative to say I want to learn Burmese, Wu Minding will probably be overjoyed. I'll see if I can get 1 or 2 books specifically for learning Burmese then. After agreeing on the matter of learning Burmese together, I also remembered another thing I had unintentionally heard from Rotten Teeth today. According to Rotten Teeth, every time they left the compound, it would take almost half a day by car to see a village. Although the mountain roads were difficult to travel, it was still much faster than walking. If it took half a day by car, it would probably take more than 10 hours by walking, or even longer. If possible, we also need to prepare a map of the nearby area, a compass, necessary medicines, and at least 3 days' worth of food and water. It's best to prepare tools like ropes, knives, and clothes too. Without these things, even if we can get out of the compound, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape very far. Before escaping the piglet status, thinking about these things was undoubtedly a waste of time. It was hard just to survive then. But now, a more detailed escape plan had to be put on the agenda. Brother Chong, with your current identity, it should be easy to prepare food and water. But medicines, maps, and compasses are not easy to get a hold of, Wang Lingling said, her brows furrowing as she thought seriously. I know these things are hard to get, but I'm telling you these things to give you an idea, and also to pay more attention, especially when listening to Burmese scum chatting. You never know if someone might have them. In addition to these things, there is another important thing that we need to start preparing for right now if we want to escape alive. Wang Lingling immediately asked in confusion, what is it? Physical exercise. While speaking, I had already forced myself to overcome the dizziness and headache, and climbed out of the sofa and began doing push-ups. Escaping the compound didn't mean that we would be safe right away. There was still a long way to go from this hellhole to the border. Without good physical health, we would be unlikely to escape this large forest, even if we weren't chased by the Burmese scum. After being kept like pigs in the compound for so long, my physical fitness had deteriorated a lot, and Wang Lingling's was even worse. I wasn't planning on getting a steel-like body, but at least I needed to be able to run 5 or 6 miles in the forest in one go. Chapter 84. The Disfigured Top, Flower Pig. Could it be Yushio? Life in the scam compound was gradually getting back on track day by day. Wang Lingling and I no longer had to be as on edge as before. Wang Lingling quickly became a key business member of Scam Group 10, while I spent my days training the new piglets, teaching them how to commit scams. After work and during our free time, we would take time to learn Burmese or exercise in our room. Originally, I could only do 30 or so push-ups in one go, but with daily training, I could now easily do 60 or 70 push-ups without any effort. In addition to learning Burmese and exercising, I would visit the convenience store every other day or so, buying a pack of cigarettes one day and some biscuits or canned food another. Over time, I not only became familiar with the young Burmese female boss of the convenience store, but also subtly stockpiled at least a week's worth of food for Wang Lingling and me. One day after work, I had just finished dinner and came out of the cafeteria when I bumped into Rotten Teeth, who had grease all over his face. As soon as the scum saw me, his eyes lit up as if he had seen his own father, and he rushed over. "Brother Chong, what are your plans for tonight?" Rotten Teeth casually wiped his mouth with his sleeve, revealing his black and rotten teeth as he greeted me with a grin. "What plans could I have? How about we invite a few off-duty brothers to have a drink?" A hint of disgust flashed in my eyes, and I smiled as I took out a cigarette and handed it to him. Drinking or playing cards was something I did almost every night in the past 10 days since I had arrived at Scam Group 10. Of course, most of the drinks and snacks were bought by me, and I usually lost 9 out of 10 card games. The 10,000 yuan red envelope that Wu Minding had given me last time was now almost gone. If I didn't get any additional income, this kind of life wouldn't last long. Fortunately, since I had been promoted to an in-house business trainer, I had already started receiving a salary and commissions. My basic salary was twice as much as the lowest Burmese scum. They earned 10,000 yuan per month, while my salary was 20,000 yuan. Moreover, according to Wu Minding, as long as the group achieved the monthly performance target, I would also receive 1% of the total group performance as a commission. 1% didn't sound like much, but it was actually quite a lot. As of now, under my careful training and guidance, the total performance of Scam Group 10 had exceeded 3 million yuan. From this part of the commission alone, I could receive more than 30,000 yuan. In addition to the basic salary and total group performance commission, I also had a portion of personal performance commission. Scam Group 10 didn't have new recruits every day, and there wasn't business training every day either. When I wasn't training the piglets, Wu Minding demanded that I continued to commit scams as before, but without any performance requirements. My personal performance commissions were no longer 1%, but 5%. In the past 10 days or so, I had earned tens of thousands from my personal performance commissions alone. If it wasn't for the fact that this scam compound was truly not a place for humans to stay, I might have even considered just staying here for a few years to make some money before going back. It was no exaggeration to say that with my earning speed in the compound, apart from Wu Minding, Abu, the 10 group leaders, and the 3 compound supervisors, very few people could compare to me. As long as I was determined to make money, it was not impossible to make 200,000 or 300,000 a month. Of course, even if I could make 2 or 3 million a month, I wouldn't want to stay in this hellhole for a single extra second. Rotten Teeth, that old lecher, had never been very interested in drinking, and when he heard me mention drinking, he immediately curled his lips and said, "What's so good about that stuff? It's like horse piss." Changing the topic, the scum rubbed his hands excitedly with a lecherous smile on his face. "Brother Chong, I heard that Sister Fei dealt with a few disobedient flower pigs today, and they should have just been sent to the barbershop now. Hee, how about I take you to taste something fresh, have an experience?" Having hung out with Burmese scum like Rotten Teeth for so long, I of course knew what a flower pig meant. I don't know what they were called in other compounds, but in the Dragonflower compound, flower pigs referred to the piglets who were sent for sex work. Every flower pig would go through a strict training process before they were officially sent out of the compound to serve clients. Only those who passed the training would be qualified for work. Rotten Teeth and others didn't know exactly how the training process worked. Rotten Teeth only knew that flower pigs were also divided into several levels, and the higher the level, the higher the price after they were sent out of the compound. The lowest level of flower pigs would of course only be sent to low-level establishments where you could get laid for $5. It was said that the buyers of the top-tier flower pigs were basically all big shots from the Golden Triangle and even around the world. A top-tier flower pig could even sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The most important reason why Rotten Teeth was so enthusiastic about the barbershop in the compound was that he might be able to experience the beauty of a top-tier flower pig for 100 yuan. Of course, that would only happen if you were extremely lucky. Taste what fresh thing? Aren't women all the same? I deliberately pretended to be disdainful and then prepared to leave. I was really not interested in the women in the scam compound. Wang Lingling and I had been living under the same roof for so long, and I hadn't even touched her finger, let alone other women. I had always been clear that I wasn't a person with very strong self-control. Because of this, I was even more afraid to indulge and degenerate. I was afraid that I would gradually get used to, or even enjoy this kind of life. Brother Chong, don't be in such a hurry to leave. I also heard that among the flower pigs that were sent to the barbershop this time, one was once rated as top tier. If it weren't for the fact that that woman's face got disfigured, she would probably have become the private pet of some big shot. It doesn't matter if her face is disfigured. We're not touching her face anyway, right? Tisk, TSK. A trained top-tier flower pig. Just thinking about it makes me unable to resist. Rotten Teeth grabbed his crotch a few times, his mouth watering from the desire. Seeing his lecherous look, I really wanted to slap him hard across the face. For some reason, when I heard Rotten Teeth mention disfigured, the image of Yushio instinctively appeared in my mind. Yushio's face was also disfigured. Could it be her? Is it really as amazing as you said? I don't believe it. Let's go take a look. Thinking of this, I pretended to be moved by what Rotten Teeth had said, and immediately showed an eager attitude. Don't worry, Brother Chong. I guarantee you'll have a blast. Brother Chong, can you lend me some money first? I'll pay you back next month when I get my salary. Rotten Teeth said with a flattering smile as he led the way. I knew that this scum was being unusually attentive because he was plotting something. No wonder he wanted to drag me to the barber shop. It turned out that he was out of money. We're brothers. There's no need to talk about lending. I'll treat you this time. I patted Rotten Teeth on the shoulder, pretending to be generous, which made the scum so happy that he wanted to call me Dad right then and there. Chapter 85. Shocking. Is this what a flower pig is? The barbershop in the compound was not far from the convenience store. There was no sign at the door, only an old neon light. Before we got close, I saw two Burmese scum with their arms around each other's shoulders, with guns slung over their shoulders, speaking in Burmese as they came out. One of the scums was fastening his belt and smiling while making obscene gestures. I had only started learning Burmese recently and could only roughly make out a few keywords such as very moist, big, and white. Putting them together, I could barely guess that the two scums were discussing women. Underneath the neon light at the door was a recliner and an old creaky electric fan. A middle-aged Burmese woman in her 40s was lying on the chair, cracking melon seeds in a desultory manner. When she saw Rotten Teeth and me, she just glanced at us casually, pointed to the money box next to the chair, and held up two fingers. Rotten Teeth grinned and rubbed his hands beside me. His meaning was obvious. Of course, I wouldn't care about a mere 200 yuan. I casually took out 200 yuan bills from my pocket, showed them to the Burmese woman, and threw them into the money box. Chinese pretty boy, do you know the rules? After I gave the money, the Burmese woman raised her hand to stop Rotten Teeth, who was about to rush inside, and asked me in broken Chinese, "What rules?" I frowned and subconsciously looked at Rotten Teeth. The scum had been talking about women all the way, but had not mentioned any rules at all. This place is Sister Faye's private property, and the flower pigs inside are also Sister Faye's. You can play with them however you want, but you can't kill or cripple them, and you can't tell them what you shouldn't say. If something happens to the flower pigs, no matter what your status is, you will suffer. Perhaps because she herself was Chinese, the warning in the eyes of this Burmese woman, who played the role of a madam, was very obvious. Understood. I nodded seriously, and was even more curious about the legendary Sister Faye. I had originally thought that this place was a business run by the compound, but I didn't expect that it was her private property. 100 yuan per person per time didn't sound like much, but it was a monopoly. Moreover, those Burmese scum stayed in the compound year after year, and there were no entertainment activities. Apart from gambling and drugs, women were the best outlet. There were 10 scam groups in the entire Dragonflower scam compound, and each scam group had about 40 or 50 people, including the low-level Burmese scum, the group leaders, vice group leaders, and the people in the canteen and logistics. 10 scam groups had about 400 or 500 people. This didn't include other people outside the scam groups. According to my rough estimate, there were at least 700 or 800 Burmese scum in the entire compound. Just calculating 5 visits to the barbershop per month for each person added up to about 400,000 yuan. Conservatively speaking, that would be 5 million a year. Most importantly, this business was almost zero cost. That Sister Faye didn't have to do anything and could make that money by just lying at home. It seems that the background of the legendary Sister Faye is deeper than I imagined. After carefully looking at the front of the small shop, I was even more wary of this only woman of the 3 supervisors. Okay, go in by yourselves. Hand over your guns to the guards at the door, and they'll give them back to you when you're done. You don't want to get shot by others before you even have a chance to fire your gun, do you? The middle-aged Burmese woman waved her hand to signal us to go in. I had just taken a step when her instructions came from behind me again. Understood. I nodded and continued to walk inside with Rotten Teeth. The layout of the place was a bit like an old factory building, but now it had been divided into small compartments using broken boards. After handing over our guns to the two Burmese scums guarding the entrance, Rotten Teeth and I were led inside. As soon as I went in, a strange smell mixed with sweat and a strong seafood odor came at me, almost making me throw up the dinner I had just eaten. This is too fucking smelly. I covered my nose and complained. If it wasn't to confirm whether the disfigured woman that Rotten Teeth was talking about was Yushio, I wouldn't come to this hellhole even if they paid me. Hee hee, I wasn't used to it the first time I came here either. You'll get to like this place after coming here a few times. Rotten Teeth said with a smile as he greedily took a big breath, his face full of intoxication. I curled my lips and said nothing, too lazy to argue with this perverted scum. Each compartment was roughly covered with a curtain. If the curtain was lifted, it meant that there were no customers. If the curtain was down, it meant that someone was doing business inside. Every time Rotten Teeth passed a compartment with a lifted curtain, he would stretch his neck and stare at the woman inside with lecherous eyes. He would even touch them a few times. Even the compartments with lowered curtains where people were doing business, the scum would secretly lift the curtains to peek inside. He was clearly looking for the top-tier flower pig with the disfigured face he had mentioned. As I walked from one compartment to another, I became more and more shocked and more angry. Without exception, all the women in the compartments were Chinese. They were wearing different styles of extremely revealing lingerie on their upper bodies and the same style of open-crotch pants on the bottom. That's right, open-crotch pants. The kind of open-crotch pants that kids wear for easy toilet access. When they saw me passing by the compartments, the women did not have the slightest hint of change because of my Chinese face. Instead, they just kept giving me come-hither looks and posing seductively, trying to tempt me to go in. Some women even deliberately pulled open their lingerie or opened their legs and made some indescribable shameful movements to attract me into their compartments. From the eyes of these women, I could no longer see any shame. It seemed that doing so was already taken for granted, or completely out of instinct. At this moment, I seemed to understand why the compound allowed Sister Faye to run the barbershop. Apart from using it to make money, it was also a way of training them. Could Yushio have become like these ghosts as well? The thought of Yushio becoming like these women made me instinctively clench my fist, while speeding up my pace towards the inside. At the very least, I had to first confirm whether the disfigured woman in this hellhole was Yushio. If it was really Yushio, and she had become like the women I had seen along the way, I would not hesitate to strangle her to death. It was better to let her be free than to let her live like a bitch. This was the only thing I could do for her right now. Last time, when Li Fei's people came to the scam business department to choose people, I was hesitant for a long time about whether to go over. Including the time before Wu Minding completely fell out with Abu and became the group leader, I had even considered going over to Li Fei's side as one of my backup plans. Now looking back, I instantly broke out in a cold sweat, even though it was hot and stuffy here. Chapter 86, Escaping the Compound, Changing My Identity and Returning Home, Final Chapter. In the innermost compartment, I finally saw the woman with the disfigured face that Rotten Teeth was talking about. Fortunately, it wasn't Yushio. After secretly breathing a sigh of relief, I couldn't stand the disgusting smell and the women with blank eyes, and turned around and walked out. Finished so soon? Facing the Burmese scum at the door who were mocking and making fun of me, I just coldly took my gun back and turned to leave. The following days were both uneventful and fulfilling. During the day, I dealt with the piglets and Wu Minding in Scam Group 10, and at night, I desperately exercised and learned Burmese. However, no one knew which would come first, the surprise or the accident. On the night before the sex work department was scheduled to pick people from various business groups as usual, something happened in Scam Group 10. While Wang Lingling and I were half asleep, we were suddenly awakened by the sound of gunfire. Immediately after waking up, there were cries, shouts, and curses everywhere downstairs and in the yard, occasionally accompanied by gunshots. I didn't know what was happening, so I could only tell Wang Lingling to hide in the bathroom with her spring knife. After telling her a few things, I quickly put on my clothes, took my gun, and went out, cautiously making my way downstairs. What happened? I quickly grabbed a Burmese scum who was running up the stairs with a gun in the third-floor corridor and asked. I'm not sure what happened. The entire Group 10 is in chaos now. It seems that the piglets in the basement prison have collectively rioted, snatched the guards' guns, and ran out. This Burmese scum didn't say much before another 2 gunshots came from downstairs, as well as a pig-like scream in Burmese. I quickly continued to ask, where's the group leader? He seems to have been shot while suppressing the piglet riot. This Burmese scum said hastily, pushed me away, and ran upstairs. Immediately afterwards, a mess of footsteps came from downstairs, as well as someone cursing in Chinese. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned around and quickly went back to the top floor and immediately returned to my room. Quick, quick, hurry up and move the sofa and cabinet over here to block the door. After closing the door, I shouted at Wang Lingling like a madman, while moving the table to block the door. With the combined efforts of Wang Lingling and me, we soon blocked the door with everything we could move in the room. After doing all this, I quickly pulled the bedroom door over and closed it, and finally pulled Wang Lingling into the bathroom with me. Brother Chong, what happened? Wang Lingling asked in a low voice, her voice trembling as she huddled in the narrow bathroom, clutching the spring knife tightly. They said the piglets in the basement prison snatched guns and rioted. Wu Minding seems to have been shot. It's unknown whether he's dead or alive. My heart was pounding wildly, as if it was about to jump out of my chest. How could this happen? Isn't the basement prison locked? And aren't there at least 6 Burmese scums with guns guarding the piglets after they returned to the prison? How could they suddenly riot? Wang Lingling widened her eyes in disbelief. If the piglets were so easily able to break out of the prison and riot, we wouldn't have gone to such great lengths to plan our escape. Yeah, I'd like to know why this happened too. And with so many Burmese scum downstairs, how could Wu Minding get shot? All this had happened so suddenly, and had caught me completely off guard. I had just a few days before my salary and commissions for this month were paid, and Wu Minding had said that, given my special circumstances, he could pay me in cash. I had originally planned to use that money to clear relations and find a chance to escape the compound with Wang Lingling. But I never dreamed that a piglet riot would happen in Scam Group 10 at this crucial moment. Now that Wu Minding had been shot, it was unknown whether he was alive or dead. With such a big incident in Scam Group 10, no one knew how the compound's higher-ups would handle it. If we lost the protection of Wu Minding, even if everything remained the same, I was afraid that Wang Lingling and I would not have an easy time in the future. If it was the worst case, not only would all the preparations Wang Lingling and I had made during this time would be in vain, but escaping the compound alive would also be completely impossible. Brother Chong, could it be that Abu, that scum, is behind this? Otherwise, how could the guns in the hands of the Burmese scum suddenly end up in the hands of the piglets who should have been locked behind iron doors? After a moment of silence, Wang Lingling suddenly guessed, her face grimacing and gnashing her teeth. This was also what I was most worried about. I had also been locked in the basement prison, so I knew what the situation was like down there. If it wasn't intentional, the chances of the piglets being able to escape the prison and grab a gun were almost zero. But now that it had already happened, even if we guessed that this matter was related to Abu, what could we do? Brother Chong, why don't we take advantage of the chaos to escape? What if we're lucky enough to escape? If tonight's incident was really a secret plan by Abu, that scum, he would definitely not let us go. The more Wang Lingling thought about it, the more she felt that tonight's incident was the work of Abu. Thinking of Abu's ruthlessness and perversion, she no longer wanted to stay here. It's not that easy. With such a big incident in Group 10, I'm afraid that the surrounding area is already surrounded like an iron bucket. Let alone people, probably not even a mouse could escape. No matter what, I've already officially escaped the piglet status and am a genuine in-house business trainer. Hiding here might give us a chance. Rushing out recklessly will definitely lead to certain death. Through the crack in the bathroom window, I could already see crowds of people outside the yard of Group 10. If the piglet riot was really a secret plot by Abu, rushing out would be the same as courting death for Wang Lingling and me. I even suspected that Wu Minding getting shot might have been a deliberate attack by a Burmese scum who was bought off by Abu, taking advantage of the chaos. Time passed by second. The piglet riot in Scam Group 10 came quickly, and it was quelled even faster. The incident caused a shock in the entire scam compound, and the 3 compound supervisors personally stepped in. With the 3 supervisors personally leading the charge, the piglet riot only took less than half an hour from the first gunshot to being completely suppressed. When Wang Lingling and I were brought out to the yard with guns pointed at our heads, the yard was already surrounded by people. The yard was surrounded by Burmese scum with guns, roughly numbering at least 100. Kneeling in the middle of the yard were a crowd of piglets. Next to them were 2 rows of bloody corpses. I discreetly counted, and there were more than 30 piglet corpses, but only 7 corpses of Burmese scum. The corpse of that scum Wu Minding was placed first in the front row. Wu Minding really did die. Although I had expected it, I still had mixed feelings when I saw Wu Minding's body. With his death, I didn't know how much longer I'd have to wait before I could escape this hellhole alive. Behind the 2 men and 1 woman who had a strong presence, I saw Abu, that scum. Just as I saw him, that scum happened to see me as well. When our eyes met, the scum's mouth curved into a smile, revealing his signature boy-next-door smile. But this smile was full of playfulness. The final outcome of tonight's Piglet riot was both within my expectations and a bit beyond my expectations. Scam Group 10 was dismantled. All piglets had 3 fingers chopped off each, and they were dispersed into the other 9 business groups. Wang Lingling narrowly avoided the finger-chopping punishment due to the fact that she was with me in the penthouse suite all night, and thanks to my efforts to protect her. All the Burmese scum of Scam Group 10 were penalized for their poor management, having 3 months' salary deducted and receiving 10 lashes. As for me, the in-house business trainer who had just escaped piglet status, I was stripped of my position. That scum Abu suggested in public that I should be returned to piglet status, but he was stopped by Li Fei, the supervisor of the sex work department, at a critical moment. According to her, since tomorrow was the day her department would go to each group to pick people, and since Scam Group 10 had been dismantled, and I had been able to create a record of 10 million in performance in 1 week with just 1 landline, I must have an extraordinary ability. Since the sex work department was preparing to expand its business, and they needed talent, she had directly assigned me to her department. This was something that I had never expected. Due to Wang Lingling's outstanding figure and appearance, plus my suggestion, Li Fei had very straightforwardly taken her under her wing as well. Letting her go to Li Fei's side with me was safer than staying in the scam business department. Even if Abu was unwilling, he didn't dare to oppose Li Fei, who was one of the 3 supervisors. And just like that, Wang Lingling and I went to the sex work department, completely bewildered. In the next few months, due to my outstanding figure and appearance, plus my excellent observation and work abilities, I gradually went from being one of Li Fei's pets to being one of her top lieutenants, responsible for expanding and contacting external business. I had finally gotten the chance to leave the compound that I had always dreamed of. But every time I left the compound, Li Fei would arrange for some people to accompany me, making it very difficult for me to find a chance to get away. Over time, I simply put aside my thoughts of escaping for the time being and focused on working for Li Fei. A few more months of this went by, and Li Fei began to trust me more and more. I also became more familiar with and had a better understanding of Burma, from village leaders to armed drug kingpins and Burmese dignitaries. The number of people I knew kept increasing. Until one day, 1 year, and 3 months after being scammed to Burma, I finally secretly created a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, allowing Wang Lingling and Yushio to successfully escape Li Fei's control with about 10 flower pigs, who had not been truly brainwashed. What I didn't expect was that after successfully escaping the hellhole, Wang Lingling and Yushio didn't choose to go back to China, but instead decided to stay behind temporarily. After that, Wang Lingling went into hiding, and with my secret help, she relied on a village leader. Yushio, on the other hand, established her own base with those 10 or so flower pigs, while using the money they earned to buy weapons and secretly start rescuing flower pigs from various scam compounds. In less than half a year, Wang Lingling had caused the village leader to die suddenly and, with the help of Yushio, had taken over the entire village's territory. The 2 women joined forces and began to operate under the name of the Ghost-Faced Rakshasa in Burma and even throughout the Golden Triangle. In just 2 years, the name Ghost-Faced Rakshasa was known not only on both sides of the Mekong River, but it was also famous in most of the territory of Thailand, Vietnam, and Burma. Shortly after Yushio and Wang Lingling had the ability to protect themselves, I also found an opportunity to break free from Li Fei's control and escape. The reason why the Ghost-Faced Rakshasa was able to establish themselves and make such a name for themselves in such a short period of time was naturally due to my secret efforts. Although we were no longer piglets and we lived a carefree life, I couldn't let go of my parents back in China, nor did I want to spend the rest of my life in a foreign land, like a rootless duckweed. Although Wang Lingling and Yushio were very reluctant, they eventually found a way to find a young man in Thailand who had a similar build and appearance to me, and who had no family and had died in a foreign country. With hundreds of thousands of dollars thrown in, and through medical means and underhanded relationships, I completely transformed into the young man who had died in a foreign country, named Zhang Feng. Of course, Zhang Feng was my current name. After returning home, I first secretly contacted my parents and asked them to go to Yunnan on the pretext of working. After more than 3 years, our family was finally reunited. 6 months later, I met a girlfriend. Her name was Yu Yu, and we got married soon after. Now our son is almost 5 years old. That's right. Yu is Yushio's younger sister. Now, in addition to having a gentle and beautiful wife, and a lovely, obedient, and sensible son, I also have a lover who is a year older than me, and she has also given me a daughter. My daughter took her mother's surname, and I named her Wang Xiling. Every summer and winter vacation, I would take my family and my two in-laws to Thailand or Zhishuangbana for travel, sometimes for 10 days or half a month, sometimes for a month or two. The end.